Part 95. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 979. Fort Mukake, Trigger Bar. Although the Trigger Bar is called a bar, it is actually a comprehensive gathering place integrating accommodation, catering, entertainment and intelligence equipment trading. It is invested by 4 consortiums and operated by the Field Corps. Located within the first wall of Mukake Fortress, it is one of the few areas in the fortress that is open to the outside world as a non-military restricted area. This is a building that covers an area equivalent to a large shopping mall. The area where the Trigger Bar was located during the heretical attack was fortunately preserved with minimal damage. It resumed business immediately after the incident, and within a period of time it has almost become the most popular place in the entire Mukake Fortress. The main customers that the Trigger Bar receives are mercenaries and relic hunters who go on missions. Many people who make a living in the wilderness will also regard this place as a forward supply depot and resting point. After all, there are thick city walls and nearly 10,000 soldiers from the field army. Protection is safer than camping in the unprotected wilderness. Some off-duty officers and soldiers also like to come to the Trigger Bar to drink, chat, and brag with the mercenaries and hunters, and do some legal or illegal small business. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which is one of the most deserted times of the day in the Trigger Bar. The guests in the bar are either working or sleeping in the guest rooms at this time. The lobby of the bar will not open until after 8 o'clock in the evening. It gradually became lively. But even so, there are still several tables of people sitting scattered in the lobby at this time. Some are drinking, some are eating, and some are just sitting there chatting with nothing on the table. The third type of people is the most common. Of course, the bar management staff will not drive away these people who are occupying seats and not spending money at this time. Anyway, there are many empty seats now. Why not let this group of people add a little popularity to the lobby? However, compared to last week, there are far fewer customers consuming drinks and food in the Trigger Bar, both during the day and at night. This is not because the number of people in the bar has decreased, but because of all the drinks and food. Prices have increased by nearly 50% compared to last week. I heard that the supply of supplies has been tight recently, so prices have skyrocketed. A man dressed as a mercenary played with the kerosene lighter in his hand and whispered to his companions, "I'm thinking about setting up a transport fleet. If we transport the supplies from Ark here and resell them, if we can control the price difference, we should be able to make a lot of money. Make a fortune?" "I'm afraid you didn't make any money, but lost your life instead." His companion frowned and said, "The information I got is more accurate than yours. The information about the truckload of supplies that was supposed to arrive yesterday nothing, so the prices of things in the base will increase. In my opinion, I'm afraid there's going to be a war." "Is this news reliable?" The mercenary who was the first to say stopped what he was doing and stared nervously at his companion across the table and asked. "This news is that I used 15 rounds of tungsten cord armor-piercing bullets to exchange it with a non-commissioned officer who came to the bar yesterday on his day off to look for business. Even if it is wrong, it is not much different." Another mercenary changed his voice. Pressed even lower. "The so-called looking for business is a slang term. People in the army sometimes leak some irrelevant information to these civilians to make some extra money. However, the authenticity of this kind of information completely needs to be purchased. You can judge for yourself. Some guys who are good at eloquence and good at telling stories can even get a sumptuous midnight snack by telling a few lies. Tisk, if there's going to be a war, wouldn't it be dangerous for us to stay here? Is there a convoy returning to the Ark recently? Hurry up and pack your things and return to the Ark with the fastest convoy. To be honest, the only kind of convoy is the Ark. No fortress base can replace the sense of security that talent can give me." An empty glass was tipped upside down, and a young man with white skin, white hair, and even his eyebrows and pupils were white, sat down on the empty chair next to the table. "There won't be any convoys returning recently. Ark, I have the latest and most reliable news. If you can buy me a drink, I can give you this news for free. And who are you? Just a little-known ruin hunter who works part-time as an information dealer, the man in white said. In other words, his main job is an information dealer who occasionally visits the ruins. After all, he can make money safely. Who is willing to sacrifice his life, don't you think so? The two mercenaries looked at each other, and the latter shook his head. I have never heard of a person like you on the road, so how can you guarantee that your news is worth a glass of wine? Why don't you tell us the news first? If we think this news is useful, so I will naturally treat you to a drink. I'm afraid this is against the rules. The white man shook his finger. Once the news is revealed, it will be worthless. Besides, my throat is very dry now. I need to get something to drink to moisten it. First voice. Do you want to fight with nothing? The first mercenary who spoke looked slightly stunned, and his hand on the table could not help but clenched into a fist. Although fighting is strictly prohibited in the trigger bar, as long as you leave the surveillance camera it's hard to say anything about the scope. There is already a hint of threat in the expressions and movements of these two mercenaries. The young man dressed in white didn't seem to realize that he had offended the two mercenaries. In terms of physique, let alone him fighting too, even if he fought too, he didn't seem to be as tall as these people. The opponent of the fleshy mercenary. Moreover, there are no obvious signs of being transformed or strengthened on this person. Perhaps, as he said, intelligence dealer is his main business. For mercenaries and relic hunters, a real intelligence dealer must be a person they need to befriend, but the guy in front of him is a character he has even heard of, and he may be a swindler who came here to trick him. Let's do this. The white man showed a hint of embarrassment. I can tell you half of the news first. If you think it's valuable and want to know the other half, just buy me a glass of wine. If you are interested in this, if you are not interested in the news, or you think it's fake news, then just pretend you haven't heard it. How about that? The two mercenaries looked at each other again, nodded, and their expressions softened slightly. You tell the other half first, and we will make a decision after listening to it. No problem. The white man cleared his throat, first scanned the bar lobby with the corner of his eye, then leaned down and said to the two mercenaries in a very low voice, 6 hours ago, Muka, all the drones used for reconnaissance at the base were released from the hangar. An hour ago, less than half of the drones returned, and these drones showed signs of extremely unstable flight. Apparently long-distance flights drain the built-in energy crystals. What kind of news is this? We also know that there is going to be a war, then we must first send drones to reconnoiter the battlefield. The first mercenary was stunned for a moment and said with a frown. Just when he was about to wave the liar away, another mercenary held down his companion's hand and said to the white man, I'll buy you a glass of wine. You continue. The white man smiled and said nothing, tapped his right index finger twice on the table, and glanced at the empty glass in front of him. Pour him a glass of wine, the cheapest one, the mercenary called to the bartender. Nowadays, the cheapest trigger bar is diluted wine made from concentrated wine slurry mixed with water. This thing has a faint taste of industrial alcohol, which not many people like, but even so, the price of this kind of wine has now increased. When I reached 80, I ordered a drink. On the Ark, 80 credits was enough to buy a whole bottle of cheap brand of sparkling wine. When paying by swiping his card, the mercenary's eyes still showed a hint of distress that was difficult to conceal. Gudong gudong. The yellow-brown wine liquid was poured into the empty glass. The concentrated wine syrup is transparent and colorless, and the yellow-brown color is food coloring added to it. Although it can improve the appearance, it does not help the taste and taste. You didn't say what kind of wine it was, right? The mercenary said to the man who claimed to be an intelligence dealer. Okay, the white man picked up the glass, sniffed it vigorously, then drank half of the glass in one gulp, smacked his lips, and then said, Muka base has secretly entered the first level. In the state of combat readiness, you cannot leave here now. When you walk to the exit of the base, you will be stopped by the guard, saying that there is a routine performance going on outside, and the entire base needs to be sealed off for about 1 to 3 days. But in fact, the entire base's troops, they were all undergoing pre-war preparations, and I saw with my own eyes that they were loading live ammunition instead of dye bombs for training. That's all. The mercenary who invited him to drink frowned. Where is the fighting place, do you know? I don't know where the war is going to be, but I know where those drones are flying back from. Where? The mercenary asked hurriedly. Noah's Ark, the white man said, one word at a time. What? The two mercenaries were stunned, and then their breathing became rapid. You mean, the battle location is, the Ark? Hey, I didn't say that. I only said that those drones flew back from the direction of the Ark. The white man waved his hands repeatedly. Don't talk nonsense, be careful of trouble coming from your mouth. How do you know that the drone's reconnaissance location must be the Ark? The mercenary asked suspiciously. Muka's officers will not sell this level of secrets to you. It's very simple. Observation. The white man stretched out his index and middle fingers and pointed at his eyes. First of all, these drones are for ultra-long distance reconnaissance, and their energy is on the verge of overdraft when they return to the hangar. Then the shortest straight reconnaissance path must be taken, so the direction will definitely not be wrong. There are so many places in that direction, how can you be sure it must be the Ark? The ones returning to the hangar are all 4th generation reconnaissance drones. This type of drone uses either the 4th generation electric engine produced by the military, or the 4th generation engine produced by a third party such as DJI. Regardless of whether it is a military product or a civilian product, the performance is very different. Combined with the energy crystallization and endurance capability of this engine adaptation, the reconnaissance radius of the drone can be directly locked. At the maximum value of this reconnaissance radius, it is the only one with reconnaissance value. The only goal is the Ark. The expressions of the two mercenaries froze. After a few seconds, the first mercenary murmured, Muka doesn't want to create. Before the word rebellion came out, his companion covered his mouth and said in a deep voice, don't talk nonsense, it's impossible. Muka doesn't even have a battleship, it's impossible. He paused mid-sentence, and couldn't help but raise his head and meet the white man's eyes. Could it be that something happened over there at the Ark? The white man did not speak. At this moment, with a bang, the door of the bar that was originally ajar was pushed open very brutally, and a school officer walked in quickly with a group of fully armed soldiers. The two mercenaries with guilty conscience lowered their heads immediately, not daring to look at the officers and soldiers who broke in. Although there are officers and soldiers coming to the trigger bar to drink on weekdays, they are all officers and soldiers on rotation, so how can there be such a battle? Even if someone is drunk and causes trouble in the bar, the most they can do is send a few sentries on duty, use rubber batons and riot shields to beat people up and take them away. But each of these soldiers is armed to the teeth. Even if you don't look at them, you can still feel a murderous aura emanating from their bodies. There is no doubt that these people have survived on the cruel battlefield. The elite are warriors crawling out of hell. The school officer leading the team looked at the few dozen people in the lobby, frowned, and said to the person in charge of the bar who hurriedly came out, there are too few people here. Call everyone in the guest room upstairs. There is an urgent mission and we need to recruit a group of good people. 10 minutes later, the originally cold bar lobby was filled with people. A few guys who had been woken up from their sleep wanted to lose their temper when they came down, but when they saw the group of murderous soldiers standing against the wall, immediately afterwards, I was so frightened that I lost all sleep, and even the energy to wake up disappeared. There is a very difficult task that requires recruiting 10 to 20 volunteers. Regardless of occupation, identity, age, gender, as long as you think you have a skill and are familiar with team operations, you can sign up. The school official, after seeing that everyone had almost arrived, he used a loudspeaker to say to everyone in the lobby, the reward for the mission is very high, enough to make you have enough food and clothing for the rest of your life. However, I can tell you that the mortality rate for this mission is also high. Very high. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd began to whisper. Not long after, a bold mercenary raised his hand and asked, "Then, sir, can you tell us what the mission is?" "No, the content of the mission is top secret. We can only tell you if you are sure to accept this mission." The school officer refused, "But as long as you accept this mission, you will get 300,000 credits. I will give it to you after departure. 300,000, which can be deposited into your personal account or any account you designate. This is just a deposit. If the task can be completed, 6 million credit points will be paid in one go. Note, it is not divided into 6 for the entire team. 1 million, but 6 million per person." Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 980. After the actual bounty figure was announced, the bar lobby exploded with excitement, and many people started talking privately. Even if the task was not completed, they could still get 600,000. It's ugly to say, in the most unlucky and worst situation, it is equivalent to selling a life for 600,000. Not everyone has the income level of a top hunter. The vast majority of mercenaries and relic hunters work hard, and the average annual income level fluctuates around 100,000 credit points. This is 6 years of income, and it can still the advance payment, not to mention the one-time payment of 6 million after completing the task. Even if this is a task worthy of death, many people in the bar lobby are excited. People die for money and birds die for food. What's more, people who come out to work as mercenaries and relic hunters either have enough confidence in their own abilities, or they often have a sense of luck and always feel that they will die. That won't be me. 45 minutes later, in Admiral Maginot's office. 19 people stood in a row opposite the desk, like a team of soldiers waiting for the general's review. However, the general is a real general, and the identities of these soldiers are very complicated. There are mercenaries, relic hunters, and even scavengers and miners. After hearing about the mission rewards, the people in the trigger bar rushed to sign up like crazy. Levi conducted a rough screening. After that, 19 people were selected. Standing on the far left is a woman about 30 years old. She should have been quite beautiful originally, but unfortunately her right eye is a scarlet mechanical prosthetic eye, and half of her face has been mechanized. The right hand and right leg are also cyborg prosthetics. He carried a huge variable ballista on his back, and a long and short quiver hung around his waist. General Maginot lowered his head and glanced at the information on the tablet in his hand. This woman was called Bianca. She once served in a special team of the Field Corps. She lost her right eye, right arm, and right leg during a mission and retired due to injuries. The compensation issued by the army was only enough for her basic life-sustaining treatment. In order to install the cyborg prosthetic body, she owed a huge loan shark. In desperation, he could only become a mercenary. It took Bicon 4 years to pay off the loan, and also upgraded all of his cybernetic prosthetics, replacing the original second-hand prosthetics that were the cheapest and required massive injections of immunosuppressants. It was replaced by the current set of military-grade tactical prosthetics. Just like in the special team, she served as a scout and fire supporter after becoming a mercenary. The variable ballista can perform both precise sniping and range shooting by replacing different launch components and arrows. Bombing. There are 6 other mercenaries among these 19 people, all of whom are Bianca's teammates. Their team is considered acquaintances of Muka Fortress. They have completed many military operations with the troops in the base, and they can basically be regarded as half of Mukaka's extra staff troops. Their 7-member team usually operates independently with Bianca as the tactical core, but they also cooperate very well with the Mukake garrison. After all, except for one free man among the 7, they are a relic hunter. All of them have served in the military and are familiar with the general instructions and tactical signals in the army. In addition to the 7 of them, there are also 5 mercenaries among the 19 people, 2 of whom are the 2 brothers who talked to the intelligence dealer in white before. These 2 people seem to have a bad temper, but in fact they are indeed a bit inconsistent. This 2-person team has been operating in the area around Muka Fortress, taking on some tasks of clearing and expelling indigenous creatures and terrain mapping. They completed more than 70 individual tasks in 1 year, with an overall completion rate of over 90%. In the mercenary world, such achievements can not only be regarded as model workers, but also synonymous with strength and luck. The other 3 are also a regular team, but their record is slightly inferior to these 2 brothers, but in the trigger bar, they can be regarded as the taller among the short ones, in a place that is not prone to frequent wars or dense traffic. It is rare for there to be multiple top mercenary teams in important areas. The high difficulty level of Muka Fortress and the surrounding areas has basically been taken care of by Bianca's team, and it is difficult for other top teams to get a share of the pie, so they might as well go elsewhere to find business. In addition to these 12 mercenaries, there are 7 people left, namely 4 professional relic hunters of the snapping turtle hunting group, a lone hunter, a miner, and a scavenger. The relic hunter did not go into details. The remaining miner and another scavenger aroused the curiosity of Admiral Maginot. However, Maginot did not question them directly. After all, it was Levi who picked them out, and he still trusted Levi quite a bit. Since Levi could pick them out among a group of people, there must be a reason. Maginot looked at the information of the 2 people and immediately knew why Levi would choose them. The miner was not one of those cheap laborers who had signed a contract with a large consortium. Just from the appearance, he did not look like those who relied on others. On the contrary, some of the equipment on him looks even more expensive and professional than those of the relic hunters. He is said to be a miner, but in fact he is a mineral vein prospector who specializes in searching for undiscovered mineral veins in the wilderness, and then sells the coordinates of the mineral veins to large consortiums that own mining companies, or directly to ARC officials. People in this industry can basically make enough money for a lifetime as long as they discover a less barren mineral vein, but this guy named Wang Dalong has actually discovered 4 mineral veins, and one of them can even reach the threshold of a rich mine. It stands to reason that this guy can live a rich life just by eating dividends, so why go to the wilderness to go through life and death, let alone accept such a mission with a very high mortality rate? Admiral Maginot glanced at Wang Dalong several times. If a ghost sneaked into the team, it would be a big trouble. Levi seemed to notice Maginot's eyes, walked forward, and whispered a few words into Maginot's ear. So that's it. Maginot nodded, looking at Wang Dalong with a hint of sympathy in his eyes. Wang Dalong did not explore alone at the beginning. There were 2 good brothers with him, his wife and his son. But just when the rich mine was discovered, the survey shaft collapsed, and he was the only one to escape alive. From then on, no matter how much money he had in his account, he didn't bother to take care of it and kept doing the hard work of prospecting for mineral veins. Probably, it made him feel that those who passed away were still around him. Some people who know Wang Dalong privately call him a lonely ghost wandering in the wilderness. However, one thing I have to say is that Wang Dalong can definitely be regarded as a survival expert in the wilderness. He can even be alone without relying on any supplies. Dion survived in the wilderness for 3 months. Many times, people thought he had died in the wilderness. He would always appear unkempt in a transit station or fortress after a period of time, using silent actions. A slap in the face to those who promoted his death. There is not much information about the other scavenger, but like Wang Dalong, he is a survival expert in the wilderness. Ahem. Maginot cleared his throat, scanned the 19 people with his sharp eyes, and said, I will emphasize once again that this is a very dangerous and arduous task. The absolute best among you, most people will probably lose their lives. It's still too late for you to regret it now and leave this office, This is your last chance, you guys need to think carefully. There was a hint of wavering in the eyes of several mercenaries, but after Maginot waited for a minute, no one stood up and said they wanted to withdraw from the mission. Very good, then I will treat you all as aware. Maginot nodded. I will say the ugly words first. From now on, if anyone wants to withdraw from the mission, they will be treated as deserters and executed directly. General, we are not a regular army. The mercenary who previously traded information with the white man whispered, the rules in the army should not apply. Then why didn't you quit just now? Maginot glared at him. If you just wanted to earn the 600,000 deposit, then I can give you 600,000 and a gun right now, and let your body carry it with you. Use this money to meet your family. At this point, Maginot paused, and ultimately did not say the remaining half of the sentence. The unspoken half sentence was, if your family were alive now. I'm just asking. The mercenary was stunned by Maginot's glare. From now on, you are considered a member of the regular army's combat operations sequence. Maginot pouted angrily, indicating that Levi would explain the content of the mission to this group of people. Levi took a step forward and said, you will be divided into two groups and operate together with two special teams, approaching the Ark from the east and west directions. Ark. After hearing this word, everyone looked at each other with confusion in their eyes. Only the two mercenaries who had talked with the white man looked at each other in shock and subconsciously took half a step back. The two of them had secretly made a decision in their hearts. If Lieutenant General Maginot really overestimated his capabilities and wanted to rebel, they would have to find a way to escape on the way, even if they set up traps to kill all their teammates. I know you are very confused, but I can tell you clearly that the goal of your operation is Noah's Ark. Levi said seriously, everything you see next is top secret. If it is leaked to any unrelated person, it will be dealt with by military law. After Levi finished speaking, the images captured by the drones immediately appeared on the projection screen behind him. The quality of this rabble was much worse than that of Maginot's staff. A relic hunter from the snapping turtle hunting group even fell to the ground, with his mouth wide open, saying for a long time, but couldn't say a word. The performance of the others was not much better than his. Only Bianca, whose face was paralyzed due to mechanized transformation, and Wang Dalong, whose face was lifeless from beginning to end, managed to remain calm. General, Colonel Levi, this, in the photo, is the Ark, right? Asked a mercenary from Bianca's team and Levi's acquaintance. As you can see, the Ark has been attacked by some unknown force. At present, almost all the outer areas have been occupied. Levi used the laser pointer in his hand to draw a circle on the screen, enclosing the Ark wrapped in a fleshy carpet. But our drone still received the request for help signal from inside the Ark, which means that there are still a large number of survivors and a large number of unconquered areas inside the Ark, and they are struggling to resist and wait for reinforcements. And we, on the one hand, we are gathering troops, and on the other hand, we need an elite team to sneak into the Ark and figure out the specific situation. Levi lied. They had never received any signal from the Ark. Until now, it was still unknown whether there were survivors inside the Ark, but he couldn't tell the truth. If he told these people the truth, if so, I'm afraid morale will drop to freezing point. As a commander, no matter how desperate he is, he must let his subordinates see hope, even if it is just a false hope. As for the mission goal, it would be best if he could sneak into the interior of the Ark. If he couldn't sneak in, it would be acceptable to only conduct peripheral reconnaissance, but he would only tell the commander of the special team who was traveling with these people about this. If he told these people, it is estimated that none of these people were willing to sneak into the Ark. If you can get 6 million by scouting outside, who would be willing to get into the Ark that has been captured by all the creatures in the position? How is it possible to get in? Moreover, if I read correctly, those ship-shaped things are the wreckage of the garrison fleet, right? Even the garrison fleet. A mercenary's face showed despair. His face was so pale, his legs were shaking like a sieve, both of them were people who were used to seeing life and death. If an ordinary person saw these things, he would be scared to death. One thing I hope you all understand is that now not only you have no retreat, but we and all mankind have no retreat. Levi continued, do you think that without the Ark, relying only on the few production facilities in the wilderness, how long can the people in the base hold out? Do you think that this unknown enemy will not attack other fortress bases after capturing the Ark? Instead of sitting back and waiting for death, it is better to fight hard while there is still room for counterattack. Fight. At this time, Admiral Maginot knocked on the table and added, in this way, I will personally pay for each of you to complete the task, and the reward will be increased from 6 million to 10 million. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 981. 10 million credits, normally, would be enough to make these mercenaries so excited that they can't sleep. But now, none of them showed even the slightest excitement about it. If the Ark was gone, the credits would only be it's just a meaningless number. Even if Muka Fortress can hold on for a while, after the news spreads, no one will use credits to trade, and the survivor society will probably enter the most primitive barter stage, just like those exile settlements are the same. Moreover, one of Levi's words hit the point, since this unknown enemy will attack the Ark, will it let go of other human strongholds? Do you have a detailed action plan? Bianca was the first to react and asked Levi, also, I need equipment support, and I hope the base can open the equipment warehouse with the highest authority level to us. Of course, Levi nodded, I have something else for you. After speaking, he took out several black metal cards and handed them to Bianca and others. There are no characters or patterns on these metal cards, but the size of the cards is very familiar. Most of the devices on Ark that can swipe cards use cards of this size, just like ID cards from the old era. Bank cards and bus cards are all the same size. What is this? Asked a mercenary next to Bianca carrying a large caliber anti-material sniper rifle. Communication card, Admiral Maginot said solemnly, after you enter the Ark, as long as you insert this card into any public communication terminal that is still available, you will be able to contact an absolutely trustworthy, the big shot. He will issue follow-up instructions to you, you just need to do what he says. The card that Maginot gave them was used to contact the undead crew. Communication cards like this are available to the directors of every large base, but they will only be used in extremely critical situations. And now, it is that extremely critical situation. Big shot. What kind of big shot is he? Bianca looked at the black card in her hand and whispered, a member of the United Parliamentary Group. Well, a person of a higher level than a congressman, Admiral Maginot said. At this point, there is actually no need for the immortal crew to hide anything. The Ark has fallen and mankind is on the verge of extinction. There is no point in bringing this kind of secret to the coffin. One level higher than the MPS. Are they the plutocrats who are manipulating the MPS behind their backs? A bold relic hunter asked. Your Excellency General, with all due respect, I don't think those people can trust it. It's not those plutocrats. If human civilization was really controlled by those plutocrats, we would have perished long ago, Levi said in a shocked voice. They are the real pilots of human civilization. If you can get in touch with them, you can put your life in their hands. The relic hunter did not continue to speak, but there was a trace of resistance in his eyes. People who are accustomed to freedom, such as mercenaries and relic hunters, have no idea about obeying orders, especially those strangers who are above them. In fact, he was very resistant to the order. The relic hunter immediately made up his mind. If that big man asked him to carry out a death mission, he would immediately smash the communication terminal, break the black card, and disguise it as a communication. The situation where communication was interrupted due to attacks, he felt that not only himself, but others should have similar thoughts. Either die immediately, or linger in the wilderness for a while. Most of these people would choose the latter. Remember, the highest priority goal is to find out what the layer of things surrounding the Ark is, as well as the monsters hatched in the tumor-like growth on the surface. After completing the first goal, immediately compile the intelligence into a report document, which will be sent by an unmanned person. The aircraft will be brought back to MaleProtagonist base. Then we will conduct reconnaissance operations inside the Ark. As for the specific action plan, there is no one. Levi said to the 19 people, "We don't know anything about what happened over there in the Ark. You are the first advance team, and you must adapt to any situation." When they heard the words advance team, the mercenaries had no obvious reaction. On the contrary, several ruin hunters shuddered subconsciously, while exploring the undeveloped ruins. Advance team. The three words team are basically synonymous with dead people. The higher the level of the ruins, the more so, and the Ark in the photo is definitely no less dangerous than an S-level ruins. These ruin hunters never thought that one day they would become advance team members. It only took half an hour to check the equipment. There was no high-tech new equipment in the equipment library of MaleProtagonist Fortress. As for the kind of trial-type large-scale killer that has not been mass-produced, there was no such thing. Some of them are old guys who have been in the army for many years, but Baikon's request is not to get some top equipment from General Maginot. For them, those who have never been exposed to new equipment are not. The equipment would most likely not be as convenient as the weapons she was used to. The reason why she made this request was actually for the same thing, active ammunition. Although Kaylan and the others have as much active ammunition as jelly beans to play with, for ordinary mercenaries and ruin hunters, this is a rare commodity. In fact, they rarely encounter enemies and erosion. The situation of fighting with containers of seeds or erosion seeds, coupled with the exaggeratedly high price of live ammunition on the black market, almost no mercenaries and ruin hunters always have such special props. In the number 1 ice house, a heavy refrigerator with 4 coated locks was opened. The logistics officer carefully pulled out 2 metal boxes from the compartment of the refrigerator and placed the folded boxes aside. On the table, Bianca reached out and opened the box. The inside of the box was filled with shock-absorbing sponge. 4 rectangular holes were dug out inside the sponge, and 4 small and exquisite boxes were stuffed in the holes. Each of these boxes contains 50 rounds of standard dose active ammunition. The caliber specifications are divided into 2 types. One is a universal 10mm caliber full-power ammunition for the Type 01 rifle, and the other is a 9mm caliber pistol ammunition. As for the active ammunition used by sniper rifles is not in stock at MaleProtagonist base. The standard way of using active ammunition is to use heavy firepower to tear open the body of the corrosion seed, expose the core, and then drive the active ammunition into the core. The active cells of the flesh-eating worms in the warhead are absorbed by the corrosive seeds to poison the corrosive seeds. This kind of battle usually occurs at a close range of less than 100 meters. Pistol bullets and rifle bullets are the most commonly used. Yes, as for active ammunition for snipers, they are basically custom-made and have very little inventory. This kind of ammunition will soon lose its effectiveness after thawing. You must carry it in a mobile refrigeration box. "Do you understand?" the logistics officer said to the group of mercenaries. "Remember, they only target the seed of corrosion and the container of the seed of corrosion. It's effective. If it were any other monster, the lethality of active ammunition would not be as good as live ammunition." "Got it." Bianca closed the metal box, put it into the mobile refrigeration box she brought, and asked one of her subordinates to carry the box behind her back. "Boss, are you sure we will encounter that kind of monster in this operation? I look at the things in the photos, they don't seem to be the same type of creatures as the corrosion seeds." "Can active ammunition be used?" another person asked a mercenary named Bianca's team. "Whether it comes in handy or not, Being prepared is better than having no countermeasures when you actually encounter something like that, Bianca said coldly. That's right, the mercenary who traded information with the white man before nodded. As expected of Bianca, she thinks more thoughtfully than us. By the way, if there are any other special weapons like active ammunition, please tell me. Let's come a little bit. You have to know that our mission this time is to save all mankind, and it's not the same thing to buckle the rope. This is the only type of specialized weapon against a certain kind of creature, the logistics officer said with some displeasure. If you want a powerful weapon, I can get you a few individual tactical nuclear bombs. Forget it, that thing is okay. Forget it. Hearing that a single soldier used a tactical nuclear bomb, the mercenary waved his hands repeatedly. The most famous thing about that thing is that the killing radius is further than the range, unless it is on an airplane. If it is used on the ground, if it is launched on flat ground, even if it is immediately driven in the opposite direction and fled at full speed after the launch, it will still be affected by the nuclear explosion, let alone detonating inside the Ark. After picking up the active ammunition, this ragtag team left the equipment warehouse, joined the two special teams at Mukake base, and drove out of the base. The personnel involved in the operation were divided into two detachments. The first detachment was composed of the Pecan team and the military's Grey Fox team. They drove directly along the boundary line of the Western Plains and approached the Ark from the west. The second team, the team consists of everyone except Bianca's team, plus the military's Spear team. They will first go to the Chelan Air Force Base located 50 kilometers south of Mukake, where they will transfer to a high-speed transport aircraft. Take the aerial route and approach the Ark from the east side. There is a reason why Levi divided the two teams into land and air routes, because now we don't know any characteristics of those enemies, and we can't confirm whether the other party is more sensitive to ground targets or air targets, so we have the two teams take different transportation. Putting things on the Ark is like putting eggs in different baskets. If there were no vehicles that could drill into the ground, he would even think of detaching a third team to approach the Ark from the ground. 50 kilometers south of Mukake, Stone Forest Air Force Base. This base is located on the edge of a stone forest, with an open plain to the north and stone pillars as densely packed as a forest to the right. These jagged stone pillars have become like strange sculptures due to years of weathering, according to ruins experts. According to research, this stone forest can also be regarded as a relic of the Alpha civilization. These stone pillars, with an average height of more than 50 meters, are all man-made and are probably used for some kind of sacrificial activities. However, apart from these stone pillars, nothing else was found in this area. Even the totems and carvings that may have been on the surface of the stone pillars were completely weathered, so this stone forest was discovered within a few years. It was removed from the relics list, and the stone forest relics was only retained as a landmark term. The Chelan Air Force Base originally had several warships parked, but a few days ago these warships were transferred away by high-level officials, and there is no news yet. Now the huge base is empty except for a few maintenance factories. The huge row of semi-suspended airports were all empty, with only a few transport planes painted in gray-blue camouflage parked on the apron on one side. Everyone in the second team jumped out of the car and ran quickly towards a transport plane parked in a conspicuous position. This was an improved version of the Amran-class transport plane. From here to the Ark, it only took half an hour, can save about 3/4 of the time compared to the first unit taking the land route. Although flying is more comfortable, to be honest, I would rather take the land route, the mercenary who exchanged wine for information said to his companions. If you arrive at the mission location half a day late, you might be able to get your lunch half a day later. You say yes. Bah, don't say such unlucky words, his companion spat, then glanced at the fellow spear soldiers from the corner of his eye, and lowered his voice and said, if the situation is not right, you have to move. Got my brain. Use your brain has many meanings, and the last tactic of the 36 strategies is one of the most commonly used. Just when the two of them boarded the transport plane, they found that there was a person who was not in their team sitting in the cabin of the transport plane. This person was wrapped tightly, with a large scarf covering his face tightly. It was wrapped up, and a pair of huge sunglasses covered the upper half of his face, but for some reason, the two mercenaries always felt that this man looked like they had seen him somewhere. "You are." The two people's eyes suddenly fell on a trace of white hair scattered under the man's helmet, and they said in shock, "Are you the information dealer? Why are you here?" "Of course I'm here to take part in the mission," the other party said with a smile. "Mission? This is top secret. You were not selected. How could you?" The mercenary who invited him to drink was about to turn around and ask his fellow soldiers. The next second, he saw the intelligence the trafficker took out a black card from his pocket, a black card exactly like the one issued to them by Admiral Maginot. "You should believe it now, right?" The intelligence dealer shook the black card and stuffed it back into his pocket. "If I didn't have permission, the crew wouldn't have let me up, right?" Did you add it in later? Aren't you afraid of death for such a dangerous mission?" "You are not afraid. What should I be afraid of?" Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 982. Speaking of which, why are you wrapped up so tightly? Aren't you feeling suffocated? Asked another mercenary. The area where Muka Fortress is located is adjacent to the Molten Mine area and can be regarded as the place with the warmest average temperature on Alpha Planet. Albinism, have you ever heard of it? The information dealer rolled up his sleeves, revealing a sickly white wrist. "People like me not only cannot have their skin exposed to the sun, but they may even go blind if they look directly at the sun, not even sunlight filtered by radiating clouds. Hasn't this disease been conquered a long time ago?" Through genetic modification technology, the mercenary obviously knew about this disease and asked. "Human genes are constantly changing. In this case, there is no disease that can be completely overcome," the information dealer said in an understatement. "Also, do you think I am the kind of person who has the money to undergo genetic modification surgery?" "No way," the mercenary shook his head. "Then you are really miserable." "You'll be fine once you get used to it," the information dealer said, pulling the scarf up a little further. That's right." The mercenary was stunned for a moment and nodded. Compared to the previous doubts and threats in the trigger bar, after the information provided by this man was confirmed, his attitude changed completely. Whether the other party relies on his own reasoning ability or has other ways to obtain this information, it means that this is a very skilled person worth making friends with. What's more, the other party can also get a black card, and they can reach the Stone Forest base one step ahead of them. This alone can explain a lot of problems. This albino intelligence dealer might be related to General Maginot. "By the way, what do you call your brothers?" the mercenary asked in a friendly tone. "Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself first. My name is Soap, and his name is Giraffe. The two of us have been hanging out in the Mukake area for almost half a year. Now, we are somewhat famous. The last time the heretical sect attacked the Mukake base, we participated in the base defense battle and repelled several waves of attacks together with the soldiers. Since the other party may be General Maginot's man, if you want to get close, you must describe yourself as great and upright." After being on the road for so long, Soap has already become very smooth. "People say people speak, but ghosts tell lies. This set of rules is even more familiar to me." If the other party is a freelance mercenary, then his words will turn into complaining and complaining about the difficulty of the mission, and by the way, he will test whether he can win over the other party and tie him to the same boat. On the contrary, you must show that you are loyal to the Ark and humanity, and you must not make the other party suspicious. Maybe this guy is the pawn that General Maginot placed in the team to monitor these mercenaries. 600,000 has been obtained. If possible, Soap and Giraffe now want to spend all the money in the store at Mukake base and then run away. Of course, they are just thinking about it. "Joker, you can call me Clown," the information dealer said. Unless they are very close comrades, mercenaries usually refer to each other by code names. Even names like John and Jack that look like names are basically pseudonyms. This is understandable, but when normal people give themselves nicknames, they still use more or less normal words. The word clown always sounds like a very twisted psychological suggestion. Is this a nickname given to you by others? Giraffe couldn't help but ask. I've never heard anyone call themselves a clown. Ah, brother, I didn't mean to laugh at you, I just felt a little confused. Of course, giving yourself a nickname would not be an insulting word, not to mention that the word clown has many not so good connotations on the internet. Occasionally, it may be okay to use it to make fun of yourself, but to be successful, you have to be called often. The code name, this is somewhat. Even if he is Old Dog, his code name is not Dog but Hound. If someone unfamiliar with him dares to call him Old Dog, it will be considered a light punishment if he gets scolded by him. My clown is based on the Joker, the king of poker. Joker explained. Oh, that's what it meant. When you said that, I suddenly felt that this nickname became domineering. He soap calmly bumped the giraffe who said the wrong thing with his elbow, and said with a somewhat embarrassed smile. The plane took off, the clown said. The next second, a vibration came from under their buttocks. The Amran-class transport plane rose vertically from the ground into the air, and soon climbed to an altitude of 2,000 meters. The Joker tugged on his scarf again, covering the small piece of exposed skin above the bridge of his nose. But what Soap and Giraffe didn't realize was that at this time, it was about to fall, and this hemisphere of Alpha Star would be completely shrouded in darkness. There would be no sunlight shining through the radiation clouds to cause any harm to the clown. Joker lowered his head and glanced at the dial on the inside of his wrist. Under the time display, there was a customizable countdown. The countdown number jumped from 10 hours to 9 hours, 59 minutes, and 5 minutes. 19 seconds. An imperceptible sadness flashed across the clown's eyes, but he was wearing dark sunglasses, and even Soap sitting opposite him could not see the change in his eyes at all. There are many more dangerous factors when flying at night than during the day, but they are also more hidden. Compared with being discovered by the enemies who attack the Ark, these dangerous factors become insignificant. The person driving the transport plane was a veteran. At this altitude and speed, the cabin of the transport plane was as smooth as the first-class cabin of a passenger plane. Even the cup of instant coffee that had just been soaked in soap almost overflowed to the rim of the cup. On the seat armrest, none of the liquid inside sloshed out. I wish I could have had a good sleep in the morning. Ah. The giraffe, who yawned repeatedly, stretched and complained, counting from midnight the day before yesterday, my total sleep time so far is less than 4 hours, don't let the battle break out by then, and you'll die suddenly first. Want one? The leader of the Lance team sitting closest to the hatch took out 2 syringes from his pocket and shook them in the direction of the giraffe. Good guy, this is a military stimulant, and it's a model exclusively for special forces. This is a good thing, Giraffe said in surprise, and immediately stretched out his hand with a shy face, but the other party took the syringe away directly. When I asked you to choose the equipment, these medicines were also included. Didn't you take them yourself? Asked the captain of the spear team. I took it, but I'm not willing to use it, the giraffe muttered. This thing is not for you to use now. The side effects after the effect of the medicine wears off are enough to make people collapse, or even go into shock. The captain of the spear team suddenly became serious. If you feel sleepy now, wait until you arrive at the mission. There is also a chance to catch up on some sleep on the plane before arriving at the location. I know, I've also been a soldier. Maybe I joined the army earlier than you. The giraffe flattened his mouth and said, I'm just complaining, why do you take it seriously? I don't like to joke with people, especially when I'm on a mission, the captain of the spear squad said coldly. Not only him, but also the eyes of other soldiers in the spear squad were looking at the giraffes and their group of mercenaries. Sometimes, there is also a trace of disgust. Who are you showing the stinky face to? The giraffe said secretly in his heart, turning his head and looking out the window. They were now over the Zhounan corridor. As the name suggests, the Zhounan corridor is a corridor located in the south of Ark. In the narrow strip, one side is an abandoned mine vein filled with high concentrations of radiation, and the other side is a dangerous swamp inhabited by a large number of indigenous creatures. This relatively safer corridor is less than 1 kilometer wide, and the Mukake base caravans traveling to and from the Ark will more often choose to take the flat western plains instead of this narrow corridor that looks uneasy. After bypassing the Zhounan corridor, the Ark shrouded in night appeared in everyone's sight. Everyone in the team who was still doing their own things turned around in unison, lay on the portholes, and looked in the direction of the Ark. Past. In the darkness, you can only vaguely see an outline. Because the distance is too far, you can't see anything strange from the outline, but the usually star-like lights of the Ark's superstructure have all been extinguished at this time. The airport light beacons used to guide aircraft and warships are even missing. The outline of the dark giant in the distance was enveloped in an inexplicable sense of death, like a corpse of a giant beast dormant in the shadows, and it was also a corpse of a giant beast that could turn into a zombie at any time and rush toward them. Soap felt that his heartbeat had obviously accelerated and his breathing had become much faster. He put his hand on his chest and kept breathing deeply. In the current war, adjusting to the state is the most important thing, not only for him, but also for other people in the team. They are all doing similar things. Although they had seen the captured Ark more clearly in the daytime from the photos taken by drones, when the Ark actually appeared in front of their eyes, the picture that seemed like a fantasy became directly visible. In fact, the impact cannot be described in words. For a moment, Soap wanted to grab the joystick from the pilot's hand and turn the plane's flight direction around. The Amran-class transport aircraft did not turn on any lights, not even the navigation lights to ensure safety. All lighting equipment in the cabin and even the altimeter LCD screen were turned off. All radio channels remained silent. The screen also lit up only the minimum operating panel. Even the crystallized engine was turned off by the pilot, the propellers on both sides of the wings were flattened, and the entire transport aircraft changed to gliding mode, gliding in the night sky like a silent ghost, gradually approaching the body of the huge beast. Everyone in the cabin couldn't help but hold their breath. According to the plan, the aircraft would fly around the Ark in a gliding state for a quarter of a week, and after collecting enough data, it would then use anti-gravity at a distance of 3 kilometers from the Ark. The device briefly hovered at low altitude, while the members of the second team lowered to the ground by rappelling ropes and walked the last 3 kilometers on their feet. The first stage of the gliding flight went extremely smoothly. Both the infrared camera and the low-light camera captured a large number of photos. Soap took out the telescope collected from the equipment warehouse at Mukake base and turned on the infrared mode. In the Ark as a whole, in thermal infrared mode shows a deep blue-green color. Although Soap was observing the Ark from the air with a thermal infrared imager for the first time, he knew it. Under normal circumstances, due to the large number of devices that can dissipate heat on the Ark, the hull should be orange-red, at least higher than the temperature of the surrounding environment. But now the entire Ark is almost the same as the surrounding environment in the thermal infrared image. The environment is integrated, and only the tumor-like growths on the surface retain the heat. From a distance, they look like dense red and yellow spots. This kind of creature that looks like a carpet seems to be a cold-blooded animal, Soap muttered to himself. In the thermal infrared image, they are almost invisible. The jury is still out on whether it's an animal or not, the giraffe continued, but the monsters hatched in the tumors are not easy to deal with at first glance. I'm afraid there are hundreds of thousands of them, right? I don't know, General Maginot. How many troops can be gathered? The first phase of reconnaissance has been completed. The captain of the spear team interrupted the conversation between the two. Everyone, be ready to rappel. P.S. The Soap here is not the Soap of Task Force 141 in Call of Duty, John McTavish, but the book friend who often gives me tips soap is of great use. Another, the title is The Reading Giraffe. These two buddies have been with me since my first book until now, and I have never assigned any roles to them. It just so happened that this time there was a vacancy for a supporting role, so I just used it. In addition, I just learned today that the original audiobook of Alien Ruins Hunter, jointly produced by China Literature Group and Himalaya, has been released. I haven't received any news before. I looked at the time and it seems that the update started in November. The current progress is chapter 122. I went to listen to it. The broadcasting studio responsible for my book is very professional. The script has been changed to a certain extent to make it more colloquial. It has optimized the listening experience while ensuring that the original content remains unchanged. In addition, there are also various special effects and dubbing, and even the sound of Ian's boots on the metal ground, breathing and heartbeat when entering the cargo hold to get protective clothing in the first chapter are all made, which can be said to be very excellent. Those book lovers who feel that reading text is too tiring can try audiobooks, which is also a good reading experience. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 983. The transport aircraft begins to slow down. When it decelerates to a certain extent, the anti-gravity device installed inside the fuselage will start to stabilize the fuselage in mid-air. Compared with the crystal engine, the anti-gravity device produces much less movement. More difficult to detect by detection equipment. But the moment the transport plane stopped in the air, a spike as thick as a bowl penetrated the cabin without warning, skewering a mercenary and the Spear Squad soldiers sitting opposite him. Heartbroken. "We have been discovered," the leader of the Spear team shouted immediately, picked up the assault rifle hanging on his chest, turned his head and shouted in the direction of the cockpit, "Open the cabin quickly and let us out." No, the current height is 600 meters. When the rappelling rope is fully released, it will only be 150 meters long. The remaining 400 meters are enough to break people into pieces. The driver responded loudly, "I have to rely on the anti-gravity device to quickly lower the altitude of the plane so you can get off." "We were discovered the moment the anti-gravity device was turned on," Soap also shouted loudly, "This thing will kill us. Turn it off, and then let's rappel to a farther location." "It's been exposed anyway, what difference does it make if it's turned off or not? The plane is already in a hovering state. If you want to leave this place, you have to restart the engine." "Do you think we can escape?" the captain of the Spear team yelled at Soap. "I plan to make an emergency landing." The pilot clutched the joystick tightly and stared at the console. The aircraft body has been damaged. In addition to the cabin, the two crystal engines have also been penetrated. "We have lost power." Fortunately, the crystallization engine had been shut down during the gliding stage, otherwise the exploding engine alone would have been enough to cause the entire transport plane to disintegrate in the air. "Is it possible to make an emergency landing at this height?" Soap asked urgently. "If the enemy's next target is an anti-gravity device, we will be thrown to death." Generally speaking, aircraft emergency landings are forced to land by taxiing, but now this Amran-class transport aircraft is completely hovering in mid-air like a helicopter, and the propellers at the ends of the wings on both sides have been stopped rotating and relied entirely on the reverse thrust of the anti-gravity device and the two compressed air nozzles at the bottom. If the anti-gravity device was destroyed, the reverse thrust of the compressed air injection alone would not be able to support the weight of the transport aircraft itself, and he fell vertically from the air and hit the ground heavily. "I think it's better to skydive," Giraffe also said from the side. "The target of the transport plane is too big. If we stay here, we will wait for death. By then the anti-gravity device will be destroyed, and we will not even have the chance to skydive." "You can't parachute." The opinion of the captain of the Spear team was completely opposite to that of the Giraffes. "The enemy's accuracy is very high. Being able to accurately hit two crystal engines at this distance speaks volumes. The parachute speed is too slow. The sky is a perfect target and we have no choice but to make an emergency landing. But just as the two groups of people were arguing, the pilot of the plane had already begun the emergency landing operation. Although he was also very nervous, and the hair on his forehead and back were wet with sweat, his hands were unusually stable, holding on with one hand. He used the joystick to carefully adjust the balance of the fuselage, while his other hand continued to reduce the air output of the reverse thrust nozzle and the power of the anti-gravity device, allowing the transport aircraft to descend vertically. The altitude was decreasing, but the cabin also began to shake violently. Two more spikes penetrated the cabin. One spike pinned a Relic hunter from the snapping turtle hunting group to the seat, and the other spike it amputated a soldier's right leg. Fortunately, the anti-gravity device of the transport plane was not hit. 550 meters, 500 meters, if any of you want to parachute, hurry up, the pilot shouted without looking back, if you don't jump, I will activate the energy shield. This is a high-end version AMRAAM-class transport aircraft equipped with a shield generator. However, the energy shield has advantages and disadvantages. Once it is turned on, the transport aircraft in the dark night sky will become like the most dazzling star in the sky. Like stars, he is simply actively asking the enemy to focus on him. The pilot was betting that he could land the transport plane to the ground before the shield was broken. He didn't care whether he parachuted or not. From a certain point of view, if someone really jumped out of the cabin at this time, he could help the transport plane share the burden. A burst of firepower would actually increase the chances of survival for those who remained on the plane. We should have turned on the shield a long time ago, Soap said through gritted teeth. Because of the violent shaking of the fuselage, everyone had to use seat belts to tie themselves tightly to their seats, unable to move. This feeling of not knowing when a sharp thorn will be shot from behind and pierce through one's body is simply maddening, and the wailing of the injured soldier pushed the tense atmosphere up several levels. The hot blood spurted out from the aorta of the broken leg and splashed on almost everyone in the cabin. Soap lowered his head and glanced at the smart watch on his wrist. The number on the dial representing the real-time heart rate had soared to 119. You know, even when he usually performs high-intensity training, his heart rate rarely reaches this value. With the help of several subordinates, the captain of the spear team managed to stop the bleeding of the injured soldier. However, in just a few seconds, the blood loss had reached a fatal amount, and the soldier's face was as pale as paper. He became pale, and his moans and breathing began to become fainter and fainter. There was no plasma on the transport plane, and the hemostatic and stimulant drugs were useless at this time. The captain of the spear team sighed, pulled out his pistol, and pulled the trigger on the injured subordinate. On this mission, they were simply unable to carry a seriously injured person who was unable to move. Even if they could revive the injured person, they could only abandon him on the transport plane to die. There is no base or transfer station nearby that can provide medical rescue, and the Ark 3 kilometers away has been captured by unknown creatures. At least the external structure has been captured. Even if they can bring the wounded through the captured area and find the medical cabin, they can without plasma, the wounded man wouldn't be able to survive until that time. What Soap and Giraffe didn't know was that the wounded man who was personally killed by the captain of the Spear Squad was actually one of his most valued subordinates in the Spear Squad. This soldier was selected by the captain of the Spear Squad when he came out of the recruit camp. He has been trained all the way until now. The captain of the Spear Squad even decided to recommend him to take over the position of captain after he retired. But now, a spear penetrated the cabin. But it brought this soldier's life to an end. "Can you start the crystal engine?" At this moment, the Joker who had been silent suddenly asked the driver. "The crystal engine has been damaged. Forcibly starting it is equivalent to detonating 2 crystal energy bombs. Do you want us to be killed?" The pilot, who was focusing all his attention on controlling the transport plane, did not respond. Instead, the Spear, the team leader, took over. The height of the transport plane was still falling, but the speed of descent had slowed down. In order to avoid those spears and prevent the plane from being locked, the pilot had to use jets to keep the plane moving irregularly horizontally. But in this way, he wanted to make the plane move irregularly horizontally. It will become more difficult for the aircraft to maintain a stable state. If they accidentally lose their balance, the only thing waiting for them is a crash. No, what I mean is that at the moment of restarting the crystallized engine, open the safety lock and throw the engine out. The MRAN class transport aircraft is a piece of equipment developed under the modular design concept. For the convenience of maintenance and to avoid explosion accidents caused by engine failure, the engines located at the end of the wings can be quickly detached. Joker explained to everyone in the cabin at a very fast speed, and the enemy obviously relies on energy reaction to lock on the target. The two damaged engines that exploded are much more conspicuous than the anti-gravity device, and they can definitely help us attract a lot of firepower. The captain of the Spear team was stunned. Although this operation sounds crazy, if you think about it carefully, it can indeed greatly increase the chance of a successful emergency landing. Okay. But I need someone to help me master the timing of engine ignition and throwing, said the driver. I'll do it. The clown who made this suggestion unbuckled his seat belt, pressed his body against the inner wall of the cabin, and moved step by step towards the cockpit. The pilot of the transport plane also worked very cooperatively to stabilize the plane, allowing the Joker to enter the cockpit smoothly. The price of this was that the energy shield had to endure several spike attacks. The saturation of the shield suddenly became precarious. Joker seemed to have been in contact with the MRAN class transport aircraft. Before the pilot could tell him where the switches that controlled engine ignition and engine throw were, he had already put his hands on the corresponding buttons on the console. It seems that you should have flown this kind of transport aircraft. The pilot glanced at the Joker from the corner of his eye in his busy schedule. I won't say more. The life of this plane is in your hands. I'm here. I haven't tried the kind of manipulation you mentioned, so I can't give you any advice. Just give me a signal when you are ready, and I will cooperate with you. Anytime. Joker nodded. There is a 2-second delay for the engine to reignite. I will count down for 5 seconds. When the count reaches 0, I will control the fuselage to rotate. At the moment of the rotation, you open the lock and disconnect all connections. Use the inertia to throw out the two engines. As for the others, try to hold onto the handrails and lifting rings as much as possible to avoid being thrown out together. Understood? Joker said. 5, 4, 3, 2. As soon as the 2 in the driver's mouth was shouted, about a quarter of a second later, the Joker took a picture of the engine ignition button, and a screen that had been darkened lit up again and emitted a flashing red light. Warning. Engine damage detected. It may explode at any time, please cancel the operation immediately. The alarm sounded, and dazzling red fonts appeared on the screen. Joker pressed his hand firmly on the ignition button and never moved it away. In this case, if you want to force ignition, you must press and hold this button. If you release it, the engine safety program will automatically terminate the ignition process. It is for this reason that it must be stuck at the moment when ignition is successful. Throw the crystal engine out, otherwise, what will be thrown out will only be 2 dumb bombs that cannot explode. 1-0. While shouting 0, the cockpit directly rotated the vector nozzles on the head and tail of the transport aircraft, and increased the air outlet power. The entire transport aircraft completed a large tail flick in the air. As for the Joker, at this moment the energy shield was turned off and the safety lock connected to the engine was opened. The 2 reignited crystal engines were thrown away together with the propellers. The energy shield of the transport aircraft was opened again. The next second, they exploded into 2 gorgeous fireworks in mid-air. Everyone, pay attention. The explosion shockwave is coming. Before the leader of the Spear team finished shouting these words, the fuselage that had just stabilized began to shake violently again, like a canoe in a storm, I don't know whether it was due to the driver's superb control skills, or whether they were lucky enough to not be overturned by this terrifying force. It worked. The enemy's firepower was really diverted. Although Soap couldn't turn his head to look at the window on his side, he could still see the window on the other side. Through the flames of the explosion of the crystal engine, he could only see a few. Many spikes were shot at the two large fireworks, and the saturation of the transport aircraft's energy shield increased again. Under the cover of fireworks, the transport plane finally landed on the ground. Everyone hurriedly dragged the equipment boxes and ran out. Even the pilot, after turning off all the equipment on the plane that would release energy reactions, got out from under the seat. An FMG folding submachine gun was pulled out. But just when he wanted to get up from the driver's seat, he found that his legs were completely out of control. Under the influence of a large amount of adrenaline, his whole body was shaking like a sieve, even the submachine gun in his hand. They all slipped to the ground. "Are your legs weak?" The Joker, who had just walked out of the cockpit, looked back, then came back, pulled the driver up from his seat and let him support him. "Just now, I didn't feel that. Now after finishing the work, I found that my hands and feet don't feel like my own anymore," the driver said. I can't even speak." "Well, it's normal, no shame." Joker picked up the submachine gun dropped by the pilot, and the two walked out of the plane together. "At least you performed well in the sky just now." Are you praising me?" The pilot tilted his head and stared at the clown. "Your tone reminds me of that instructor when I first entered aviation school. By the way, you used to, also, a pilot." "I've never flown an airplane," Joker said in a very calm voice. "I'm just familiar with its structure." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 984. Is it an engineer? Or logistics? The pilot of the transport aircraft was slightly startled. Logically speaking, no matter how miserable a technician like this is, he would not be reduced to a mercenary who sells his life in exchange for money. With this person in front of him, judging from the familiarity with the Amran-class transport aircraft, it is not an exaggeration to work as a tester or technical consultant for those aircraft manufacturers. If it is really not possible, getting a ground handling job at a civilian airport will not earn as much as when how cheap are mercenaries, and their lives are not in danger. None of them. Clown shook his head. I just occasionally saw the detailed design drawings of this type of transport aircraft. Have you seen the drawings? There was a trace of surprise on the pilot's face. You must know that such drawings are not public. Even for civilian aircraft, they are the trade secrets of various manufacturers, and it is impossible for ordinary people to see them. Even people in the manufacturing factory can only see incomplete drawings of each component after disassembly. This guy actually said that he has occasionally seen detailed design drawings. What is his background? Or is it that the design drawings he has seen are only for the engine part? But judging from his smooth operation, he is obviously more familiar with the structure of the cockpit, as well as grasping the timing of ignition and throwing. This kind of extreme operation may not be possible even if the driver does it himself. So perfect. If the ignition is late or the throw is too early, the engine will not restart. If the ignition is too early or the throw is too late, the transport aircraft body will be blown up. There is also the opening and closing of the energy shield. This is carried on the transport aircraft. There was also a slight delay when the shield generator started, but he even included the few tenths of a second of this delay. Otherwise, the damage to the fuselage would have been more serious. This can't be due to luck. Judging from the opponent's performance, he is obviously very confident. With this alone, even if the driver was told that the man in front of him was once an ace pilot, the driver would not have the slightest doubt. Ace pilot becomes a mercenary? As far as the pilot knew, there was only one ace pilot named Valentina who became a ruin hunter. But the problem was that she joined the famous god hunting group, and the salary they offered was probably higher than that of those mecha competitive clubs. The main player is still high. As for this clown, to put it bluntly, he is completely a nobody. The driver wanted to ask something else, but the Joker had already helped him to where everyone was stacking equipment and put him down. Get everything you need, and be mentally prepared to not have any supplies later, the captain of the spear team said. Even if you can break into the Ark, you may not be able to find a supply point. Wait a minute. Joker suddenly said, I suggest leaving all equipment that uses energy crystals as driving energy here. Regardless of size, power, or purpose, do not bring it with you. Why? A heavily armored soldier of the spear squad frowned and shook the wall shield hanging on his arm. This thing looked like a wall shield for fighting, but it was actually a small energy shield. The shield generator is the most defensive piece of equipment in the squad. This is a life-saving thing. What do you mean by asking me to leave the shield here? The heavy-armed soldier still wanted to argue, but the captain of the spear team patted him on the shoulder and said, he said that's right, do as he said. Like everyone else, leave all the equipment that requires energy crystals to drive it here. You only need to carry the minimum energy crystals that are enough to activate the public communication terminal. Why, Captain? The heavy-armed soldier asked in confusion. Brother, are you a little clueless? Before the captain could say anything, Soap was the first to complain, have you forgotten how we were knocked down from the sky? Those enemies are obviously very sensitive to the reaction of energy crystals. Do you want to kill everyone? Although the energy response of portable equipment will be much weaker than that of big guys like crystal engines and anti-gravity devices, their direction of travel is towards the Ark and towards the occupied areas of unknown enemies. The closer the distance, the easier it will be. Energy reactions detected by the enemy, even electronic watches powered by the lowest grade crystals, may reveal their whereabouts. One piece of equipment using energy crystals as its energy source was taken out and thrown into the equipment box, including crystal energy bombs. Each person only carries a small piece of the lowest level energy crystal, which is used to activate the communication terminal in the Ark. Moreover, for safety reasons, these energy crystals are also sealed in special lead boxes. The most lethal and defensive equipment has been thrown away. As a result, the combat capability of the entire team has been reduced by at least half, Giraffe complained. Among the equipment he threw away was a new one he bought last month. A pulse laser assault rifle. This rifle cost him 3 full missions, and it still hurt him to lose it so easily. We should try to avoid fighting. If we can deceive the enemy's perception, I don't care even if I sneak into the Ark naked, Soap said to his companions. You don't even think about the strength of the enemy we face. If you want me say, even giving you an aircraft carrier and battleship will not help. Soap's metaphor is really not an exaggeration. After all, the flagships of those powerful fleets with aircraft carrier battleships have crashed on the Ark. Move towards the Ark. Pay attention to maintaining concealment and radio silence, the captain of the spear team ordered. Soap and the Giraffe looked at each other. Without saying anything, he put on his equipment and followed silently. As for the Joker and the pilot of the transport plane, they were at the back of the team. According to the requirements of General Maginot and the regulations in the mission contract, this special team is composed of regular troops, mercenaries, and relic hunters. The highest commander is the captain of the spear team. Similarly, the commander of the other team is the captain of the Grey Fox team. If the squad leader is killed in action, he will assume the role of commander in descending order of military rank until the last regular soldier is killed. All in all, the command power never goes to these mercenaries. Leading the charge is the scout team of the spear squad. A standard-sized scout team consists of 2 scouts, a sniper and an observer. The scout is responsible for collecting information, and the sniper and observer are tasked with using use the sniper rifle to deal with some little troubles, such as removing hidden sentries and dealing with lone enemies on the route of travel. It's just that the sniper was killed when he was attacked in the air, so the observer can only take on the sniper mission alone. Fortunately, the observers in the General Special Team are also selected from elite snipers. As a sniper, the impact is not that big. The scout team moves slightly faster than the large force, but because radio silence must be maintained, the distance cannot be too far. It is probably controlled to about 1 kilometer. The sniper who replaced his teammate also kept close contact with the two scouts. Standing at a distance of about 200 meters, this flexible formation is very commonly used in stealth operations. Scouts and snipers can not only respond and support each other within the visual range, but also can respond promptly when one party is in trouble. The large troops in the rear ask for help, while avoiding the problem of blind spots in the field of vision when acting together. To be honest, I always feel that we are running naked now, Giraffe said to Soap. There is no cover at all on this road, and the target is too conspicuous. If the enemy has thermal infrared vision or low light vision, looking down from the arc, you can see everything clearly. What can I do? Since we haven't been attacked yet, that means the enemy hasn't discovered us yet, Soap replied angrily. You'd better shut up your crow mouth. If it's true, if you are discovered by the enemy, I will use you as a human shield first. If you think my body can help you block those spikes, that's up to you. The giraffe rolled his eyes and held up the helmet on his head. The penetrating power of the spikes attacking the transport plane was extremely terrifying. After piercing the outer armor and the middle structure of the transport plane, they could still pierce the bodies of the two people, and finally penetrated out from the other side of the transport plane. It is no exaggeration to say that this thing may not even be able to block the frontal armor of active main battle tanks. You know, the MRAN-class transport aircraft they boarded is an improved version of the military. The armor thickness of the cabin alone is more than 700 millimeters. This is already the average frontal armor thickness of main battle tanks before switching to nano-alloy armor. Note 1. No one can block such a weapon with their bodies. If everyone in the team stands in a vertical row, the spike can penetrate directly from head to tail, piercing them all into a bloody string. Candide Haas. But what the giraffe said at the beginning is not unreasonable. In order to prevent indigenous creatures from hiding around the Ark, or the existence of hidden relics of Alpha civilization, with the Ark as the center, the area 50 kilometers outward from the edge area is surrounded by the processed terrain is also processed in a very brainless way. First, use detectors to scan all areas, and after confirming that there are no ruins or other man-made structures or nests of indigenous creatures underground, use bulldozers and explosives, flattened all the bulges on the ground, and filled the holes and depressions with cement and sand, creating a huge artificial plain. This artificial plain is called the clearance zone. If there are indigenous creatures or ill-intentioned exiles who want to approach the Ark, they will be discovered when they enter this unprotected clearance zone. No need to no matter what high-tech reconnaissance equipment, as long as you hold a telescope at a high place, you can clearly see people or animals walking on the clearance zone. The emergency landing location of the transport plane was within the clearance zone. If the enemy followed up to search for their traces, they would soon find the transport plane left in place. This is one of the reasons why the leader of the spear team executed the seriously wounded. Instead of staying in the transport plane and being captured by the enemy, it is better to leave quickly. Actually, the situation is much better than expected, the pilot of the transport plane whispered to the others as he walked away. After we made a successful emergency landing and turned off the anti-gravity device, those spikes never attacked again. We have been here before, which means that the enemy's method of detecting enemies is very simple and can only rely on energy reactions to determine our position. Moreover, the locking mechanism of this weapon that shoots spikes is a bit stupid. They will only shoot at places with energy reactions. The attack will stop immediately after the energy reaction disappears. That makes sense, Soap nodded. If I were the enemy's commander, even if the anti-gravity device of our transport plane is turned off and the energy reaction disappears, I will order to continue shooting at the location where the energy reaction last appeared, and even conduct a covering fire strike on that area. Then we are all wiped out now, the pilot shrugged. The energy shield was also turned off along with the anti-gravity device. After turning everything off, they were still worried for a while, fearing that there would be no protection from the shield. The spikes struck again, but what surprised everyone was that after turning off all energy-responsive equipment, the surrounding area suddenly became quiet, and the enemy's attacks immediately stopped. It's as if the switches for the anti-gravity devices and shield generators are the same as those for the spike-firing equipment. Speaking of which, the other team may be in trouble, a relic hunter from the Snapping Turtle hunting group said. The cars they ride in all use energy crystal engines, and they don't have shield generators. If you encounter such spikes, I'm afraid that if you shoot them down in one round, not many people will be alive. Don't worry about them for now, just mind yourselves. Soap waved his hand, raised his head and looked at the Ark. At this time, they were still 1.5 kilometers away from the Ark, and the outline of the Ark was also in their field of vision. It became clearer. Hey, look, there seems to be something on the edge of the Ark. It didn't seem to be there when I looked at it on the plane, Soap suddenly exclaimed. P.S. Note 1, a small explanation needs to be made here. The armor thickness in military terms generally does not refer to the actual armor thickness. For example, if the front armor thickness of a tank is 500 millimeters, it does not mean that its armor is really half a meter thick. This thickness is actually an abbreviation, and when expanded, it should be called equivalent thickness, which is homogeneous steel armor with a protective capability equivalent to a thickness of 500 millimeters. In fact, the thickness of the composite armor used on tanks is not that exaggerated. As for the addition of the fictional nano-alloy in this book, the thickness and weight of the armor have been further reduced. In addition, the penetration depth in millimeters of an armor-piercing projectile also refers to the equivalent penetration depth. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 985. After hearing what he said, everyone looked up and saw that the originally smooth edge of the Ark now seemed to have a row of jagged teeth. What is this? Who brought a telescope with low light function? Lend it to me. Soap turned around and asked. It's something that grows on this layer of fungi. The captain of the spear team put down the telescope and threw it to Soap. It looks a bit like an ancient ballista. Ballista. Soap grabbed the binoculars and looked at the row of sawteeth. Only after zooming in can you see that each sawtooth is actually a launching device with bones as the bow and muscles as the strings. In addition to the most basic bowstring structure, there are many details that are not clearly visible at this distance. Combined with its size, it is really similar to the ancient ballistas in history books. It seems that these are the things that just attacked us, Soap said. These things didn't exist an hour ago. It is an adaptive defense ability. Joker said to Soap, it can evolve and mutate on its own according to the enemy's type, ability, and characteristics, and in a short period of time, it can produce organs that can effectively respond and counter-attack the enemy. There is a mutant erosion seed that has such an ability. He paused, then commented, a very tricky ability. Mutated corrosive seed? Is this thing a corrosive seed? If so, wouldn't our active ammunition have an effect on it? A ruins hunter said excitedly. It's useless. Clown shook his head. The essence of active ammunition is a toxin specifically targeted at the seeds of erosion. The effect of the toxin is directly linked to the dose. You can only poison one ant with it. A dose of toxin used on an elephant will have no effect. Everyone looked at each other and saw a trace of despair in each other's eyes. Even if all their active ammunition were added together, it would not be enough to see in front of this layer of fungi that was large enough to wrap the entire Ark. At best, it would be equivalent to dropping a drop of ink into the ocean. What's more, it's still unclear whether this thing is a seed of erosion. Joker added. I hope not, Soap whispered. If it were, you wouldn't even be able to touch it. Soap and Giraffe had participated in the last defense battle of Mukake Fortress, and had also taken on several missions to assist the regular army in annihilating the heretical sect's strongholds. They knew the characteristics of creatures like corrosion seed very well. Active ammunition was very important to them. Are highly toxic, and they are also highly toxic to humans. As long as there is a slight touch, even if there are no obvious wounds on the surface of the body, there is a high probability that the cells of the erosion seed will invade the human body from the skin, and then mutate the original cells of the human body into its kind. For people with good luck, the erosion seed will condense a core in the chest and use this person as a host to provide nutrients. Before the new erosion seed enters the period of rapid transformation, the host can still survive as a container for several months to several years. A person who is unlucky will directly turn into a monster and go to self-destruction in madness. Just as everyone was thinking about the next response, a message came back from the scout team in front. The message is transmitted by light signals. Of course, it is not visible light, but infrared. The one responsible for receiving the message is also a thermal imager. The rhythm of the change of infrared intensity represents the long and short signals in Morse code, and then these signals are compiled into messages written in human language. The scout team said they found someone who escaped from the Ark. The soldier responsible for receiving the news raised his hand from the decoder and said to the leader of the spear team, but the other party was seriously injured and has lost the value of treatment. This kind of light signal can convey very little information. Just these two sentences took a full minute. Let the scout team carry out treatment immediately. At least, ensure that the person is alive when we rush over. The captain of the spear team made a decision immediately. Everyone else, gather in my direction, change to a high-speed mobile formation, and move toward me at full speed. The location of the scout team has moved. The captain of the spear team did not ask more about the wounded in the communication. It would be useless and would be a waste of time. He knew that the scout team did not carry many medicines. In addition to the standard individual first aid kits provided by the Field Corps, there were only some stimulants and quick-acting coagulants. They relied on these things to snatch people from the hands of death and use their heels. Just think about it and you know it's impossible. The medical soldiers are prepared for first aid and are allowed to perform operations if necessary. The team leader hurried away while giving orders. I don't need you to revive the person, but you must wake the person up so that he can tell what happened on my Ark. By the way, all permissions for restricted drugs are open. If you want to use them, just use them without asking for additional instructions. After saying this, he looked at Soap and the others and asked, are there any of you who are good at field first aid, or are doctors as a side job? There were originally 2 medics in the spear team, but one of them, like the sniper in the scout team, died during the emergency landing. If surgery was needed later, someone with medical skills would have to be there. Act as an assistant to the only remaining medical soldier. I can. Joker raised his hand. You. The captain of the spear squad turned his head and took a look, with a look of surprise on his face after discovering that it was Joker. Isn't your specialty related to airplanes or machinery? I thought. The transport plane pilot following the Joker also looked at the Joker in surprise. No, my main job is an intelligence dealer, my side job is a mercenary, and I have nothing to do with a mechanic. Joker said, it's just that I have always acted alone. Everyone knows that people who act alone need to master the skills. There must be a little more, so I dabble in various majors. I'm not proficient, but it should be enough. Okay, you will assist Ronnie later. The captain of the spear team did not think so much. Since there is someone who can do this, it is naturally the best. Ronnie is the surviving medic in the spear team and the only woman in this team. Everyone, hurry up. We don't have to worry about hiding our whereabouts at this time, the team leader urged again. The news from the scout team was that the man has lost the value of treatment. To put this sentence in simpler terms, it is the person can only breathe out but not in. He may be a few minutes late, and all he can see is a body that is getting colder. On a 1-kilometer road, the fully armed infantry were required to run within 6 minutes in a rapid march. The requirements for the special forces were more stringent, usually 4.5 minutes, but this time, it only took them 3 within minutes. They reached the spot where the scout team found the survivors. Of course, the price is that the entire team's formation has been stretched to pieces. The only ones who rushed to the target location include Soap, Giraffe, Clown, the leader of the spear team, and several others whose bodies have undergone enhanced or modified surgery. Fully 2/3 of the people fell behind and were left behind, including the medical soldier named Ronnie. The survivor found by the scout team was half buried in the soil. According to the description of the scout who found the survivor, at first, only his face and half of his chest were exposed. In order to prevent compression of the chest causing suffocation, the scouts only helped him clean up the sand above his chest, but did not dare to move other places. This man had multiple fractures in his body, and if he was forcibly dug out of the soil, improper operation would only cause greater damage. Maybe he just swallowed the breath he was holding onto. Is the person still alive? The panting captain of the spear team glanced at the survivor, then turned to the scout of the scout team and asked. Alive, with a heartbeat, but the situation is deteriorating rapidly. The scout sighed. In his current state, we can't give him any first aid treatment, and even we only dare to give him 1/3 of the stimulant. The dose, I wanted to give him oxygen, but he couldn't seem to get it. The scout's handling method was correct. The survivor's whole body was buried in the soil, and every part of his body was compressed. If he was given a full dose of stimulant at this time, his blood pressure might rise sharply. If you die from a burst blood vessel in your brain, you are not saving your life, but assisting your life. Damn it, that guy Ronnie, I've told her a long time ago that she should either undergo strengthening surgery or double her training, but she turned a deaf ear every time, the team leader said impatiently. He looked back and saw in the darkness there was no trace of those stragglers at all, and I didn't know how long it would take for the medical soldier named Ronnie to arrive. And now, for this survivor, every second that passes, the hope of being able to be revived, or in other words, being able to wake up becomes slimmer. Let me come. Joker said, can I lend you a few soldiers? Okay, the team leader gritted his teeth and nodded, they can do whatever you want them to do. Originally, the clown was only asked to do auxiliary work, but now the auxiliary has actually become the one who takes the lead. To say that the squad leader is not uneasy is definitely a lie, but for some reason, the squad leader has another voice in his heart. He told him that as long as he believed in the man nicknamed the Clown, he would be able to create another miracle like he did on the transport plane. Joker squatted down, carefully checked the situation of the survivors, and then opened the emergency medical kit. The emergency medical kit came with a set of simple surgical tools, including scalpels, scissors, and hemostatic forceps, but generally at most, the soldiers could only use these tools to perform minor surgeries to treat wounds and stop bleeding. Major surgeries were simply not possible. But as soon as the Joker got the scalpel, he directly slit the survivor's throat without even the most basic disinfection. What are you doing? Do you really know how to save people? The giraffe who was watching was startled and asked immediately. His condition is very bad, I can't guarantee that he can be saved. Joker said silently, but the knife in his hand did not stop, and he slashed along the survivor's throat, cutting a hole about 3 centimeters long. Causa. If there is another person here who is proficient in medical skills, he will be surprised to find that the Joker's knife control skills are very sophisticated. He only cut open the skin of the survivor and did not damage the trachea and carotid artery. Even this knife cut open, there was not much blood from the incision. The survivor's breathing is obstructed and tracheal intubation is necessary. I need a hollow tube, preferably a clean one. if there is none, a dirty one will do. The diameter cannot exceed 1.5 centimeters, but it cannot be too thin. Otherwise, the ventilation will not be enough. Joker said to everyone without raising his head. Pipe, barrel, okay. Soap glanced at the assault rifle in his hand. The diameter of the barrel clearly exceeded the standard of 1.5 centimeters. If he shoved this thing into the throat of the survivor, it would only hurt him. People were stabbed to death. Use this. The captain of the spear team took out a pen, pulled out all the refills and nibs, leaving only a hollow pen barrel, and then rinsed the remaining ink inside the pen barrel with drinking water. Handed it to the Joker. Okay, the clown took the pen and stabbed it directly into the throat incision. The next second, a whooshing sound caused by the flow of gas came from the opening of the pen barrel. This is really amazing. Zhao Zhao looked at it with his eyes bulging out. Is this a life-saving treatment? It's still far from enough. Joker shook his head. I just prevented his brain from dying due to lack of oxygen for the time being. Let alone resuscitating the person, it's hard to say whether I can restore his consciousness. At this time, medical soldier Ronnie finally arrived. Without even taking a breath, she immediately squatted down and took down the medical kit behind her. When he saw the Joker's treatment of the survivors, he was stunned for a moment, and then asked, "Have you learned battlefield first aid?" "No, you have extensive experience in battlefield first aid." "It's just a little dabbling." "Since you are here, you should take the lead and I will assist you." The clown handed over the scalpel in his hand. "No, let me assist you." Ronnie just glanced at the incision and was already sure in her heart that the man in front of her, who was wrapped up tightly, had medical skills far superior to hers. Okay, the Joker didn't refuse, and immediately arranged a task for everyone. 2 people will use engineering shovels to carefully dig away the soil around the survivors. Start digging from the far end, and be careful not to let the shovels touch them. After reaching his body, another person should perform CPR on him. Don't use all your strength, but try to be gentle. He has many rib fractures, so don't let the broken bones penetrate his internal organs. P.S. The chapter name of this chapter is wrong. The next chapter is Infiltrating into the Ark. However, it is troublesome to contact the editor to change the chapter name, so please just make do with it. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 986. Then, the Joker said to Ronnie, 5 milligrams of epinephrine, administered intravenously in small amounts multiple times. Always pay attention to the survivor's heart rate. If cardiac arrest occurs, directly inject into the heart and prepare a pacemaker. Oh, Ronnie glanced at the Joker and felt a little weird. She was almost 100% convinced that this clown had once been a doctor. The clown was even more skilled in operations than the old professors at the medical school with decades of experience, and he also had an incomparable understanding of the structure of the human body. Several times, Ronnie thought there was going to be a massive hemorrhage, and she even prepared hemostatic forceps and absorbent cotton. However, the Joker simply avoided those blood vessels, as if what he was cutting was not a living person, but a corpse. Dry silicone mannequin. Has he really been a doctor? This kind of technology should be a very famous doctor, right? Ronnie looked at the clown and wanted to ask, but she didn't dare to ask. There was one thing that made her feel very strange. According to the language habits of most doctors, they would call the rescue objects patients, but this clown actually spoke of survivors. Not only was it a bit awkward to call him, but even Ronnie sounded particularly awkward. Maybe it's because women's minds are more delicate, or maybe everyone else's focus is on whether the survivor can be rescued. Except for Ronnie, they don't pay attention to these things. They all focus on that. The handle of the scalpel gliding dexterously under the light, watching it slice through the subcutaneous tissue and muscles bit by bit. The word "budding geniu" may be inappropriate here, but it seems that there is really no more appropriate idiom to describe Joker surgery. "What are you doing now?" The captain of the spear team couldn't help but ask, hasn't his breathing recovered? Why are you still cutting open his chest? There is something inside. If it is not removed, he will die soon. Joker replied while performing the operation. Suddenly, the scalpel stopped, and everyone around him held his breath involuntarily. Joker seemed to be thinking. 2 seconds later, he stretched out his hand towards Ronnie and said, "Ranger, the biggest one." Ronnie didn't dare to neglect, and immediately took out the instruments Joker needed from the medical box, disinfected them and handed them over. The Joker pulled out the scalpel from the incision, put it aside, inserted the retractor, and after opening the incision, he quickly inserted the Ranger and pulled out a large piece of jet black from the depth of the incision. Tissue whose surface is covered with mucus. "What is this?" Soap widened his eyes and asked in a low voice. "It should have been shot from that thing." The clown gestured with his eyes to the arc wrapped in a fleshy carpet in the distance. After entering the survivor's body, it began to parasitize and invade the surrounding organs. His external injuries were actually it's far from fatal, and it's entirely because of this thing that you'll be unconscious. From the arc? No, it was something fired from those monsters. Soap subconsciously put his finger on the trigger. Then has he been infected? The survivor's somatic cells show no signs of assimilation, and this thing is not a seed of erosion. The clown used a scalpel to cut open the mass of jet black tissue. After removing the flocculent tissue on the outside, the inside was exposed. It's a hard cone in the shape of an animal's tooth. This cone is white, but there are countless small holes on the surface. A viscous black fluid is slowly secreted from these holes, and after swelling, it turns into a flocculent tissue wrapped around the outside. But the problem is that there are no wounds on his chest or back. "How did this thing get into his body?" the transport plane pilot asked. "I don't know," the clown said. "If I knew, then we wouldn't have come on this trip." Not long after the foreign object was taken out, the survivor who had been motionless suddenly began to tremble violently. This scene made everyone feel surprised and happy, but the next second, the surprise was nothing but surprise. Overjoyed? A large number of irregular cuticle proliferations suddenly began to appear on the surface of the survivor's body. These growths quickly wrapped his body. It looked like leprosy, an infectious disease that had disappeared in the old era. Severe symptoms are average. Please use Baidu to find out what severe leprosy looks like. The pictures may cause discomfort, and the text description may be too harsh and be criticized. If you are mentally prepared, you can search it yourself. If not, forget it. In addition to these growths, there are also many small tentacles emerging from the gaps in the growths, constantly squirming. "Ah!" Ronnie screamed immediately and crawled to the ground to hide. As for the others, they immediately drew out their weapons, aiming at the sudden abnormality with more than a dozen black muzzles at the same time. "Become a survivor." "You still said he is not infected," Soap whispered. "Look, what is all this?" "He is clearly a container of erosion seeds." "He is not a container." The clown did not hide away like Ronnie, but continued to use the scalpel to remove the growths that had grown out, although the growth rate was much faster than his removal speed. "Do you want to listen to what you are saying?" Soap's facial muscles twitched involuntarily. This person has tentacles growing on his body. What is this if it's not a container for the seed of corrosion? Aren't you afraid of being infected by him? These tentacles are not seeds of erosion, and they do not have the ability to infect other organisms. In other words, the method of infection does not rely on actual contact. The clown took out a glass bottle, and there was a piece of water soaked in the bottle that did not change color. The test paper said, "I did the test from the beginning, and no cells that were eroded or mutated were detected in his body tissues." "Is it possible that the area you tested was not infected at that time?" The captain of the spear team was calmer than Soap, but there was still a tremor in his voice. "The mobile refrigeration box has been opened, and active ammunition has been distributed to everyone. Soap and others have replaced the special magazine with a black and yellow biohazard mark." "That's very simple." As you see, this is what caused his infection, right? The clown picked up the cone from the ground with tweezers without changing his expression and threw it into the reagent bottle. The test paper still did not change color. I told you, this thing has nothing to do with the seed of corrosion. Is it possible that this is a new mutant species that cannot be detected by reagent test strips, or is it another monster that is similar to the erosion species? The team leader asked again. As he asked, he also while loading the magazine with active ammunition into the gun. He's not a monster, he's a human being, the Joker said. I know he is not a monster, but he will become one soon. The team leader's tone became a little more serious, and his anxiety was palpable. Now is not the time to discuss this kind of thing, even though this survivor is very important to us. It is very important, but in this situation, we must ensure that the mission can proceed smoothly. If you can't make him change back to his original appearance, then I can only order him to be dealt with. This change is irreversible, but if you want to get information about the Ark from him, now is your only chance at this point. The clown paused, and then continued, one thing I want to remind you that after you listen to the words that come out of his mouth, you may become the monster in your mouth. What are you talking about? The giraffe looked confused. Why can I understand every word you say, but when combined together, it becomes something I can't understand? The leader of the spear team was stunned for a few seconds, and then his whole face sank. His arms dropped. He no longer pointed the gun at the survivors, but turned to look at the Joker and used his utmost strength. A low voice confirmed to the Joker, meme. Almost the clown nodded. The spear team was recently transferred to the Muka base. It was one of the several batches of support troops that ARC gradually added to the Muka base after the attack. Before being transferred to the Muka base, they happened to participate in the model due to infection incident. Of course, they didn't confront the meme, otherwise the spear squad would have ceased to exist. Although order maintenance work was only carried out on the periphery, because of the terrifying nature of memes, the necessary information was still informed to the captains of each team, in order to prevent soldiers from being exposed to memes without their knowledge, leading to the spread of infection. Then, does that mean? The captain of the spear team said in a dry voice, we have all been infected. It's a little different from memes. Joker shook his head. If memes are an acute infectious disease, that would be considered a chronic infection, but there are some things that are both pathogens and they are the catalysts of the disease. Those things, if exposed to too much, will greatly accelerate the symptoms of infection, even faster than acute memetic infection. What are you talking about? Why can't I understand a word? Giraffe looked at the clown, then at the team leader, and asked. Although I don't know what the meme they are talking about is, judging from the conversation between the two, it must be something extremely dangerous. He may still have the last few minutes to wake up. If you have anything to ask, just ask, the clown said to the captain of the spear team. Of course, the premise is that you are not worried about being infected. Before the leader of the spear team could speak, the survivor struggled to turn over and said in an extremely unclear voice, hurry, run away, escape, the Ark, the further, the better. P.S. Thanks to the fish in the river and book friend 20220627174154236 for the 100 starting coins. P.S. Today is New Year's Eve. I would like to wish my book friends a smooth and healthy new year. I would also like to share with you my year-end summary and new book plans for the new year. It has been more than 2 years since the book Alien Ruins Hunter was published in October 2020. In the past 2 years, thanks to everyone's love and care, I have been able to stand out in the eyes of people around me through this book. It doesn't seem like a reliable career to gain income. Although I don't make much money just by jumping on the street, it's at least as good as going out to find a general job. In fact, I am quite ashamed of the title of full-time author. Some non-full-time authors can code 12,000 words a day. As a full-time author, I am stuck in the 4,000 word deadline every day, and I often ask for leave from time to time. I want to catch up with you. Reading should be quite painful, after all, in today's increasingly complicated environment, my updates can only be described as slow. In fact, I also try to update 10,000 words a day, but the first few chapters were fine, but the later chapters became more and more watery, to the point where I couldn't stand it. I still prefer to pursue it rather than increase the quantity. Content quality. My friends in real life have also been asking me why I don't cater to the market and write fast-paced cool articles like new media. But I think about it, in this era of cool articles, there will always be people who are willing to calm down and read this kind of articles. Novel, and you who see it here are the best proof. As long as you like to read it, I will write it. There is no point in insisting on not insisting on it. To insist on sticking to one's heart in the great trend of cool writing is too second-rate. I am just a bad book writer. There is no difference. Even when it comes to writing books, there are a lot of people who are better at writing than me just from the starting point. I'm just grateful that I can turn my hobby into a career and, after all these years, still haven't gotten bored. Closer to home, Alien Ruins Hunter has now officially entered the last volume final chapter. Just from the length, everyone knows that this book is difficult to write about human civilization becoming a god and the war of the gods, that kind of plot. Compared with those beings called gods, in fact, both the Alpha people and the Arc people are very small existences. This sense of powerlessness may make people feel tired or even desperate. According to the normal plot of the novel, the protagonist should directly cheat and become a god, or lead the entire human civilization to ascend collectively and kill that bullshit god. Get down, but readers who are familiar with me probably don't know that I don't write like that. I can only guarantee that the ending will not be a bad end, and I will try my best to satisfy everyone who has followed the update all the way to the final chapter. At the end, I would like to give you my favorite passage in the novel, The Three-Body Problem. This passage can also be used as a portrayal of the struggle and resistance of human civilization in countless time and space in this book. Look, these are bugs. The gap between their technology and ours is far greater than the gap between us and the Trisolaran civilization. Human beings have tried their best to eliminate them, using all kinds of poisons, spraying them with airplanes, introducing and cultivating their natural enemies, search for and destroy their eggs, genetically engineer them to sterilize them, burn them with fire, flood them with water, have a pest killer in every home, a fly swatter under every desk to kill them weapons. This long war has been accompanied by the entire human civilization, and the outcome is still uncertain. Bugs have not been exterminated. They still walk proudly between heaven and earth, and their numbers are no less than before the emergence of humans. Look at humans, the Trisolarans, who make bugs seem to have forgotten one fact: bugs have never been truly defeated. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 987. He seems to be saying, "Let us run away quickly." Soap pointed at the mutated survivor and said with some uncertainty. "You heard that right." The transport pilot nodded vigorously. "He told me to run away as quickly as possible, as far away from the Ark as possible." "Well, what do you think?" What I heard is different from you," Ronnie murmured as she hurriedly got up from the ground. "I seemed to hear another strange voice whispering in my ear, but I didn't hear it at all. I don't know what that voice is saying." Before Ronnie could finish speaking, Soap, who was standing not far from her, suddenly jumped back and pointed his gun at Ronnie. He asked in a trembling voice, "On your face." "What's that?" "On my face." Ronnie was stunned for a moment and reached out to touch her cheek. It didn't matter if she didn't touch it. Once she touched it, she froze in place. Her originally smooth and delicate face didn't know when it had changed. It was bumpy and bumpy, as if someone had poured acid on it. More importantly, when her face looked like this, not only did she not feel any pain, she didn't even feel the slightest bit strange. If it weren't for if Soap sees it, she doesn't know when she will notice these changes. When she took her hands away from her face, the flesh and blood on her face actually dripped down as if dissolved. Corrupted tissues and mucus adhered to her palms. If you look carefully, you can still see the contents of these tissues. There are tentacles as small as a small insect squirming. Are you infected? The giraffe's breathing became very rapid. It must be because you had contact with this person. Damn it! I knew it! I knew it! While shouting hysterically, he stepped back step by step. The safety of the gun in his hand was also turned on. As long as the index finger on the trigger was pressed a little harder, the loaded active ammunition would roar out from the muzzle of the gun. Penetrated into Ronnie's body. Soap wanted his companion to calm down first, but the problem was that even he couldn't calm down at this time. The flesh and blood on Ronnie's face began to fall off in large chunks after being touched by her own hands. Falling, her white bones were exposed in some places, but she seemed to feel no pain, standing there stupidly, silent. Can't you feel the pain? Soap tried to ask. Ronnie, whose eyes were dull, shook her head slightly. As a medical student, Ronnie knew very well that not feeling pain was far worse than being able to feel pain, because it meant that the nerves in her face had been completely necrotic. Those rotten tissues did not look like they were from a living person. What was peeling off the body looked more like it came from a corpse. Ronnie, stay calm. Don't move yet. There will be a way. There will definitely be a way. The captain of the spear team did not point his gun at his medic, whether it was the survivor or Ronnie. None of them seemed to show any aggression, and their minds were still awake, which was a blessing among misfortunes. If you want to use one word to describe the current state of the team leader, then worried is definitely the most appropriate. Before he had time to ask the awakened survivors about what happened on the Ark, his subordinates on the other side suddenly an emergency situation occurred, and it was an emergency situation that could not be postponed at all, which made it difficult for the team leader to make a decision for a while. After hesitating for several seconds, he gritted his teeth and said, "Ronnie, if you can still persist, hold on for a while. I'll finish dealing with the survivors' affairs, and then." "Hold on." Ronnie slowly turned her head and faced the squad leader with her badly rotted face, with more than half of her facial bones exposed, and said word by word, I don't know, I can't." She was soon unable to speak, because even her tongue was rotten, and a hole the size of a fist appeared in her throat. The rotten tongue rolled into a ball of fuzzy flesh and rolled out of the hole. Dropped on the floor. "Everyone, stay away from the survivors and Ronnie. Also, don't have any contact with each other," the team leader ordered loudly. Although the Joker repeatedly emphasized that the symptom is not transmitted through contact, Ronnie was the one who the survivor became like this after direct contact, which made the clown's words seem unconvincing at all. "Clown, get away quickly," the team leader said to the clown again. "Check your body to see if you have similar symptoms." "I'm fine," the clown said calmly. "I must emphasize again that it was not the contact with survivors that caused this symptom, but the whispers she heard that Ronnie mentioned just now. I don't care about any contact or whispers. Before I figure out the cause of the matter, I must put an end to all behaviors that may lead to the spread of the symptom," the team leader sternly said. "That survivor, if you can hear me say if so, just tell me what happened on the Ark. Also, what's going on with this mutated symptom?" Ark. The survivor was lying on his back, his body twitching moment by moment. He seemed to want to look up at the night sky, but his face was covered by growths, and he couldn't see anything at all in his eyes. "The Ark is finished, no one can survive, don't come back, let the people outside, never come back, everyone will die. No, it's more terrifying than death. I know something happened to Ark, but you have to tell me what happened so that I can send the information back to various bases and let the base supervisors make judgments. Do you understand? The team leader said loudly. Tell me, what's the situation on the Ark now? Are there any survivors? Which areas have the enemy captured? Survivors, cough, cough, there are, but soon, there won't be any, cough. The survivor squeezed out almost word by word, as for the enemy, enemy. The word was stuck in his throat and he couldn't say it. Ignoring the warning looks from the team leader and Soap, Joker walked closer to take a look, and then said, his throat and mouth are all gone. It was blocked by the growth and I couldn't speak. Then, can you help him clean up those growths? The team leader asked. Although this is completely contrary to his last order, at this time, only the clown can complete this task. What's more, the Joker doesn't seem to be infected like Ronnie, he has much more direct contact with the survivors than Ronnie. Yes, but the growth rate is much faster than the rate of removal. And I just discovered that removing the growth will stimulate it and accelerate its growth, just like the hair on the human body. The more you shave it, the harder it will be. The faster it grows, the thicker it becomes. It takes a lot of nutrients and energy to produce these growths, and if it accelerates any faster, it will be squeezed dry to death. Then he won't survive now, the squad leader said anxiously. At this time, he no longer cared about whether his words were unpleasant or not. Even if he dies, at least let him finish his words first. Do you know how much information there is? Is it important? This may affect the life and death of tens of millions of people. It's too late. The clown shook his head. The growths not only invaded the body surface and throat, but also invaded the brain. Even if I can instantly remove all the growths on his body and let the growths no longer growing, he is already a vegetative state. From a human point of view, he is dead, but his body organs still retain activity for the time being. The captain of the spear team angrily stamped his foot on the ground. He looked at the survivor who was still twitching but whose human form was gradually lost. He then turned to look at the survivor sitting on his knees. On the ground, Ronnie was helpless and asked, is he really hopeless? If there is help, I will save it, the clown replied. Okay, Ronnie, do you have any idea? The captain of the spear team's eyes flashed with a hint of unbearability, and he quickly walked to the clown's side and said in words that only the two of them said, I don't need you to save her, you just need to treat her as a test subject. It would be best if you can find a way to recover her or block the infection. If there is no way, it doesn't matter if you dissect her, at least, we gotta figure out what this is all about. The clown turned his head and glanced at him without saying a word. He walked up to Ronnie, squatted down, and looked directly into her eyes. To be precise, it's a one-eyed eye. One of Ronnie's two eyeballs has rotted and fallen out of the socket, while the other eyeball has become like a turbid glass ball, barely able to hold on. It is embedded in the eye socket, and it is not known whether it still has visual function. But what frightened Ronnie the most was that no matter what changes happened to her body, she didn't feel anything. She tried to reach out and pull out the rotten flesh stuck to the bones, but she felt no pain at all. As if this was not her own body. She suddenly recalled the time when she had just been admitted to medical school. At that time, human anatomy was a required course for every freshman. However, not long after the first semester started, the medical school's power supply system suffered a serious problem. Due to a malfunction, the entire college was without power for 15 days. There was a leak in the house and it rained all night. It happened that during that time, the backup power supply of the cold storage was sent to the logistics department for routine maintenance. Most of the gross body teachers are soaked in formalin solution and will not spoil easily even if they are not frozen. However, some newly arrived gross body teachers, in order to allow the students to dissect the body that is closest to the state of a living person, they are not treated with preservatives. Preservation relies entirely on freezing. Not long after the power outage, these remains began to rot. When this group of students, led by the professor, walked into the cold storage where the general teacher was stored, the strong corpse smell made several girls bend down and vomit on the spot. Ronnie is a brave girl. Not only did she not vomit, she even took the initiative to help the professors and staff move the coffins stored in the general teacher. While one of the coffins was being moved, an explosion suddenly erupted. The loud noise, but fortunately the lid was locked, did not affect the students and staff who were moving the cabinets. Based on the knowledge in the book, Ronnie knew that it should be a phenomenon called giantism. Please do not search for it, the picture will cause strong discomfort. Just when other students were avoiding it, she joined in. He went up and watched the faculty and staff open the coffin where the explosion occurred. The contents of the coffin cabinet were difficult to describe in words, but for some reason, Ronnie didn't feel scared. Instead, she put on rubber gloves for dissection and reached out to touch them as if by chance. The feeling was exactly the same as when she touched her face with her hands now. "Can you hear me?" The clown stretched out a finger and waved it in front of Ronnie. Ronnie's eyes did not move with the finger. As for the focus of the perspective, the entire eyeball had become extremely cloudy. Even the pupils and the whites of the eyes cannot be distinguished clearly. Where can the focus of the eyes be seen? Just when everyone thought Ronnie was completely hopeless, she suddenly nodded slowly. "Very good, the auditory system can still function normally, but that may be one of the reasons why you look like this," the clown whispered. "Can you still hear those whispers now? Are those voices the same? Has it been lingering in your head, lingering, as if it's been deeply engraved into your brain?" After waiting for several seconds, Ronnie nodded again. "Forget them," said the Joker. This time, Ronnie shook her head. "Can't you forget it?" The clown seemed to sigh, and it seemed that everyone just misheard. He stood up, pulled out his pistol, and put the muzzle of the gun against Ronnie's Tianling cap. "Is it hopeless?" asked the leader of the spear team. "The erosion is so deep that any effort is pointless," the Joker replied. "What degree of erosion? Do you mean infection?" The team leader was a little confused. "Then can you figure out how this disease is transmitted? Even if we can't save it, we still have to know, otherwise, you won't even know how you got infected." "I told you, this kind of thing is very close to a meme." The clown pointed at his head with the other hand that was not holding a gun. "Cognition is pollution." Puff. The sound of the pistol with the silencer was very dull. Ronnie's body tilted to one side and fell to the ground. A mixture of brains and blood slowly flowed out of the gun hole above her head. If she used a light to illuminate it at this time, if you look at these things, you will find that her brain is actually a strange gray-black color, mixed with a large amount of flocculent fibers. "Captain, are we going to continue?" a soldier from the spear squad couldn't help but ask. "The mission is not completed yet, of course it must continue," the team leader said without hesitation. "Besides, the survivor also said that there are still people alive on the Ark." P.S. Thanks to Walker 11211 for the 1000 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 988. Although the morale of the team was very low, no one raised any objection to the team leader's order. After briefly disposing of the survivor and Ronnie's body, everyone continued to move towards the Ark. "Hey, clown!" During the march, Soap quietly leaned to the clown's side and asked in a low voice, "By the way, are you not infected? You just had the most contact with that survivor." "I said this symptom is not spread by direct contact," the clown said, tugging at the scarf that covered his face. Only then did Soap notice that the clown's movements were a little weird. The expressions in his eyes changed several times in just a few seconds, and then he asked in a lower voice, "Are you already infected? Are you afraid of being abandoned?" Or, "I was being processed, so I didn't want to say anything." Let me say it one last time, those symptoms are not spread by direct contact. Believe it or not, the clown's tone became a little colder. These symptoms are spread through a medium similar to memes. As for this meme is what it is. This is the top secret officially recognized by ARC. Anyone who knows about this must sign the highest level confidentiality agreement. You can ask the captain of the Spear team if he is willing. I don't mind if I tell you at the risk of leaking the secret. But, if you are not infected, why do you cover yourself so tightly? Soap said quietly in a voice that only the two of them could hear. One of his hands had already reached under the hem of his clothes and stuck it on the pistol holster on the outside of the thigh. It's night now, and you can't even see the moonlight. There's no way your skin will be burned. As for the light from the lighting equipment, it shouldn't cause any harm to you, otherwise, you should be dressed like this in the lobby of the Trigger bar. As for hiding your appearance, that is even more nonsense. Giraffe and I have seen your face in the Trigger bar. Except for us, no one has seen your face. There are at least a dozen people, and the identity must be verified before entering and exiting the Muka base. It is absolutely impossible for the guards to let a person with a covered head and face pass. The clown didn't answer his words, which made Soap more convinced that his guess was correct, but it made him even more nervous, being so close to a highly contagious mutant, and having to it is absolutely impossible to expose the opponent's disguise without a big heart. If it were the giraffe guy, he would have been calling people by now, Soap thought secretly. Your body has mutated, right? Soap said. It's just that your mutation speed is not as fast as that of the survivor and the female medical soldier. Is my guess correct? Totally wrong. The clown glanced at him out of the corner of his eye. If I was infected by the survivor, why did I cover up my body in the first place? Your conclusion is not valid at all. Soap was stunned. He thought about it carefully and realized that what the other party said was indeed correct. Before meeting the survivor, the guy named Joker had already wrapped himself up from head to toe. But at that time he probably didn't know that he would meet the survivor, nor did he know about the infection. If it could be predicted, wouldn't it be a profit? If he could foresee it, he should not operate on the survivor and hide as far away as possible. Soap was a little frustrated inside, but at the same time he breathed a sigh of relief. The clown was wrapped so tightly that not an inch of his body was exposed. Even when he just operated on the survivor, he used all his fingers to operate the scalpel accurately. He took off his tactical gloves, but he immediately put on a pair of medical nitrile gloves. Logically speaking, he did not have any direct physical contact with the survivor. On the other hand, the female medical soldier named Ronnie was rough in operation and even got the blood of survivors on her wrist. It was not a surprise that she would be infected. But for some reason, even if this misunderstanding was resolved, Soap always felt that the clown in front of him seemed to be different from the intelligence dealer he had seen in the Trigger bar. No. It should be my misunderstanding. The white hair, pale skin without a trace of blood, and the eyes under the sunglasses are exactly the same as the guy in the Trigger bar who exchanged information for drinks. If this is another person, it can only be that intelligence dealer's twin. Soap deliberately slowed down, a few steps behind the clown, and observed the clown's figure and body outline from behind. Although the clown's outfit was completely different from when he was in the Trigger bar, his body shape was still right. The misunderstanding must be my misunderstanding, Soap said silently in his heart. As long as he thought about this matter carefully, the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this idea was wrong. But when he put his attention elsewhere and allowed his thoughts to race around in his head like a wild horse, he felt that it was wrong. I can sense that there seems to be something not quite right about the clown. Is it because of the abilities he showed? Or is it his weird outfit? Or is it the unknown origin black card in his hand? None of this seemed to be enough reason to doubt him. Soap returned to normal traveling speed, followed, and asked, I'm sorry, I was thinking too much just now. What happened just now made me a little nervous. When I think about it carefully, you are wrapped up better than anyone else. Yan Shi, you have no direct contact with the survivor at all. If you want to say that you are infected, other people are more likely to be infected than you. Yeah, the clown nodded. Just think about it. This mission is very dangerous, and we shouldn't be suspicious of each other. It's true, Soap repeatedly echoed. I'm not suspicious. I'm just a little curious. There's no sun now. Why do you have to cover it up so tightly? Ah, I don't mean anything else. I'm just curious. Don't you feel bored like this? I don't think so, the clown said. As long as I am outdoors, no matter day or night, I will cover every inch of my skin. It has become a habit. There was a night operation before, and I did not take protective measures. As a result, my teammates did not remind me. Multiple flash bombs were thrown in succession, and I almost lost my eyesight permanently. Oh, that's it? I understand, Soap nodded repeatedly. It's really unethical to push people. It's clear that there are people with albinism in the team, but they still use flash bombs without warning in advance. The most vulnerable thing for people with albinism is not their skin, but their eyes. Generally, patients with mild albinism can go out on sunny days if they wear sun protection. The only thing they need to pay attention to is to protect their eyes and wear sunglasses, and do not look directly at the sun. The strong light that a flash of light can release in an instant is much stronger than the bright light of looking directly at the sun. Even if you close your eyes and cover your eyes with your hands, the strong light will penetrate through your fingers and pass through your eyelids, piercing the eyes. He was just a temporary teammate, but those flash bombs failed to save his life. The next second, his head was chewed off by the indigenous creatures that rushed towards him, the clown said casually. What a death! With a teammate like this, I wish he would sacrifice himself to the heavens as soon as possible, Zhao Yao responded. What followed was some useless chatting. The two of them chatted one after another, and the team finally arrived directly under the ark at the scheduled time. Except for the sentries and scouts, the captain of the spear team gathered everyone together, took out a tablet, and displayed a drawing on the screen. This is the structural diagram of areas 9 to 21 of the external frame on the west side of the ark, which is what is above our heads now. Since we cannot enter the ark from the conventional entrance, we can only choose unconventional passages, the squad leader said. After getting close to the ark, they determined that the ark was not completely wrapped in a fleshy carpet, but that part of the structure was still exposed. The general shape of the ark is a disc-shaped flying saucer, thick in the middle and thin at the edges. It relies on tens of thousands of support columns and an equally astonishing number of anti-gravity devices to suspend it above the ground. The center of the ark is only a dozen meters away from the ground, while the edge is hundreds of meters or even thousands of meters away from the ground. The area underneath is called the shade area, which means that it is under the shadow of the ark all year round. Area covered. The fleshy fungi only covered the upper part of the ark, and about 1/3 of the bottom of the ark was exposed. Those fleshy fungi hung down to the ground in the shaded area like the aerial roots of a big banyan tree, but because the ark is very large and seems to have dense aerial roots. In fact, the distance between each root is more than 10 meters, allowing everyone to walk through it. Moreover, during the process of traveling, these roots did not produce any stress reaction, they did not seem to have any ability to seek enemies, or they might only react to energy crystals. I have checked and found that all personnel passages, cargo passages, and vehicle entrances and exits have been blocked. Although these fleshy carpets have been quiet so far, I think it is better not to interact with them unless absolutely necessary. There was no direct contact. Yes, I don't want to touch those things even if I die, the giraffe nodded hurriedly. Not only him, many people in the team still believe that these fleshy carpets are a mutated corrosive species that will be infected as long as they come into direct contact, and the survivor and Ronnie died from this kind of infection. There are 2 routes now, the team leader marked the 2 routes on the drawing in red. They are the W193A maintenance channel and the W257C maintenance channel. These two maintenance channels are for each large-scale maintenance. There is a built-in electric lift used by maintenance personnel to enter the inside of the frame, but we cannot confirm whether the power supply is normal. If the circuit is cut off, we can only climb up with bare hands. It's better to prepare for the worst. The transport plane pilot crossed his arms and said with a frown, the power supply lines used by these two channels should be the same. If the power is cut off, they should both be cut off. There is not much difference. There are still differences, the team leader said. The length of the inspection channel W193 is 400 meters, and the length of the inspection channel W257C is 650 meters. If we choose the latter, we need to climb an extra 250 meters, but the exit of the latter is located near the power plant in the West 12th District, less than a kilometer away from the nearest public communication terminal. The exit of the first channel is at the edge of the outer frame, which is a no-man's land. The nearest public communication terminal takes nearly half an hour even by car. I choose the second passage, Soap said immediately. I would rather climb an extra 200 meters in the elevator shaft, and I don't want to walk that far inside the arc. Now that the outer frame has almost completely collapsed, who knows what is there? What? I would also choose the second option, the transport plane pilot said. The longer the route, the more variables may occur. The top priority is to get in touch with the survivors on the ark immediately to find out the situation. The team leader looked at the others, and it was clear from their expressions that everyone had the same idea: choose the longer passage but closer to the mission target. Then choose W257C. The entrance to channel W257C is a full 180 meters away from the ground. During maintenance, maintenance personnel will take a suspended platform or elevator to reach the entrance. But now the team does not have such conditions, so they can only use an emergency measure. The so-called emergency means is to aim the laser transmitter at the receiving device next to the entrance and input the emergency command, so that the hatch at the entrance will automatically open and a roll of ladder will be thrown out. A 180-meter long suspended ladder, TISC, if it shakes, it will be quite painful. Zhao Zhao glanced at the ladder hanging down from the cabin door and couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Although the bottom of the ladder can be nailed to the ground, the length and texture of the ladder mean that the stability of this thing will not be very high. The scout team will go up first. After entering the maintenance channel, they will check the power supply first. If there is still power, lower the elevator. If there is no power, then they will have to climb up one by one. The emergency opening device uses a built-in power supply. This power supply is fine for opening the door, but it is far from enough to drive the lift. The two scouts climbed up carefully. Under the constant shaking of the ladder, they climbed very slowly, but fortunately they managed to get into the maintenance channel without any danger and successfully lowered the elevator. Is this the only good news since we started taking action? Standing on the stable elevator, Soap sighed. To be honest, I have already prepared to climb the 180-meter ladder first, and then climb the 6-meter ladder. The 150-meter tunnel is ready. That's right, the giraffe nodded. You can't be unlucky all the time, right?